As Su Jingwen was driving the car, she thought, why did Ning Qingxue come? I am very familiar with her. Usually, someone like Ning Qingxue wouldn't come to a birthday party when she wasn't invited. Oh no! Su Jingwen suddenly remembered something important. Yimo is also coming tonight. What would happen if they see each other? Jingwen, what's wrong? Your mind doesn't seem to be here. Li Mumei saw that Su Jingwen appeared to be a bit distracted and hurriedly asked, oh, nothing really. I suddenly remembered something, but it's fine now. Oh right, Mumei, you didn't tell me that Qingxue was coming. Qingxue, have you taken over your father's business by now? I heard some people saying that you were already at Ning Family Medical Materials. Su Jingwen tried to find some conversation in order to divert from her feelings of surprise. However, Li Mumei said, actually, Sister Qingxue took over the business in Beijing ages ago, and I have always been there to help Sister Qingxue manage the business. It's just that some things happened and Sister Qingxue has now temporarily left Ning Family Medical Materials. Su Jingwen didn't ask what it was. It was probably internal conflict, and it was better not to ask about these things. Seeing there was trouble knitted between Ning Qingxue's eyebrows, she probably came to relieve herself of the unhappy things. Should she give Yimo a call to tell him not to come tonight, so that Ning Qingxue's doesn't feel worse? Thinking about it, Su Jingwen suddenly realized something important. Yimo didn't have a phone at all, he wasn't at school right now either, and she didn't even know where he lived, so she couldn't possibly contact him. By the looks of things, it was set in stone that Yimo and Ning Qingxue were going to meet. Sister Jingwen, I heard from Mumei that your mother wasn't very well. Is she better now? Of course, Ning Qingxue could tell Su Jingwen was a bit distracted, so she took the initiative to ask first. Su Jingwen had returned to being herself and decided to worry about Yimo later. It wasn't something that she could control now anyway. Hearing Ning Qingxue ask, she smiled happily. My mother is all well. Didn't Mumei tell you? Ning Qingxue felt a bit awkward. She didn't ask Li Mumei about Su Jingwen's mother's condition before coming. However, Su Jingwen didn't seem to mind and continued. I met a master purely by chance. You guys don't know about it, but that master's charm. Su Jingwen admired Yimo the most now. When Ning Qingxue asked, she made it sound like that master who sold her the charms was indisputable and unrivaled in the whole universe. She even recounted the specific details of buying and using the charms. Ning Qingxue and Li Mumei had their jaws open in shock after hearing this. They all stared stiffly at Su Jingwen. It was very rare to see someone like Su Jingwen being so superstitious, especially after receiving such a high education. To them, the person who sold Su Jingwen the charms definitely had an eloquent mouth. Jingwen, it's good that your mother is well. There is no need to go into such elaborate detail about how she recovered. Seeing how Su Jingwen was so superstitious, Li Mumei could only hint at her. I know you guys don't believe me, and I won't force you to. I have a fireball charm on me. If I didn't treasure it so much, I would use it and show you guys. However, if I did, I wouldn't be able to buy another one even with all the money in the world, since I can't find that master anymore. Su Jingwen said helplessly. Okay, we believe you, Su Shingun. Under great reluctance, Li Mumei could only surrender. Even Ning Qingxue, who had a constant frown in her eyebrows, wanted to laugh. Su Jingwen was older than both of them, but her words were so unrealistic. It just could not be matched with her astute reputation. Seeing such a beautiful lady talk about a master who used shady charms really didn't match. If her own situation weren't so dire, she would have probably laughed seeing Su Jingwen put on such a Shingun show. Yimo made the bracelet and just put it straight in his pocket since he couldn't find a proper packaging to make it look better. He started recovering his chi immediately as he spent quite some effort into making this bracelet. If it weren't so difficult to sell them, he would probably make a few to sell. Since coming to this world, it was the first time Yimo took the taxi. He didn't want to run to one private place, and neither did he know the way. Yimo's taxi stopped outside. The guard at the door saw Yimo take the taxi over and was surprised as he didn't look like someone wealthy. Although he was wearing neat and clean clothes, his hair wasn't groomed and was unkempt. Moreover, he was wearing a normal pair of Vans. These shoes couldn't be worth more than $30 to $40, so he immediately stopped Emo. "Sir, this is a private place, it isn't open to public." Before the guard finished his words, Emo took out the invitation and handed it to the guard as he didn't care. With this appearance, it was normal for the guard to keep a close eye on him. The guard looked through the invitation a few times, and after confirming, he returned it to Emo with surprise. "Apologies, please go in." Just when Emo went into the yard, a red Porsche pulled into the yard. In contrast with his entrance, this time it was as though the guard was just purely for display. The red Porsche dashed past Emo, before slowly reversing back to where he stood. The driver was evidently quite arrogant. This was a big yard, not a high-speed freeway. One glance could tell that this was a very cocky person. Just as Emo thought this, a girl jumped off the car, clad in a red top and tight jeans. Her womanly features were clearly outlined, and an air of superior arrogance and glamour was evident. Su Mei. Emo wasn't surprised to see her here. She was Su Jingwen's cousin after all, and it was normal for her to come to Su Jingwen's birthday party. However, although this woman was arrogant at school, she still seemed reserved. However, he didn't think that outside of school, she didn't bother to hide it at all. "Emo? Stop. What are you doing here?" Su Mei was rejected without reason last time and lost several $100s to Emo, which made her feel very uncomfortable. Emo stared at Su Mei in a feigned bafflement. "I came here because I was invited. Is this place yours? Do I need to report to you before I come?" At this moment, another girl jumped off the car. She dressed similar to Su Mei, but what made her more eye-catching was that her hair was dyed yellow. "What's wrong, Mei Mei? Who is this guy?" This girl asked Su Mei and scanned Emo with a haughty side glance. Su Mei sneered, and before she could talk, a military-plated Audi parked at the door but didn't come in. Instead, a 20-or-so-year-old youth got off. He also saw Emo and walked over. "Mei, long time no see, what's wrong, you don't seem to be happy." This youth had a smile and greeted her from a far distance. Su Mei saw this boy coming over, and her face immediately turned into a smile. "Brother Wang Shu, you didn't even come to see me, yet you say long time no see? I came now, didn't I? Jia Jia is here too." This youth had a calm tone and didn't have that impetuous temperament youth usually had. "I thought Brother Su didn't recognize me." The yellow-haired girl pretended to be angry. Emo saw them and thought that, although this man looked very gentlemanly, there was a sense of ferociousness in his temperament, even a faint sense of a killer's chi. Ordinary people would be unable to discern this killer's chi, but Emo killed many people and monsters in his past life. He could tell with one glance that this youth definitely killed before, and he killed blatantly. He should be even proud of doing it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have this type of killer's chi. However, Emo didn't have any business here, so just as he turned to leave, this youth turned his head and extended his hand saying, "I'm Wang Su, you are?" Emo saw this youth extend his hand with a face full of mockery and immediately knew what he was trying to do. He extended his right hand slowly and casually said, "Emo." Seeing Emo and Wang Shu shake hands together, the happiest person was Su Mei because she knew Wang Su had a quirky habit. Whenever he met a man for the first time, he would test their strength through a handshake. Once, her classmate shook hands with Wang Su and screamed in agony. Afterward, that guy didn't have the face to come after her again. Now, Emo and Wang Su were shaking hands. What would the result be? Su Mei was even looking forward to hearing Emo scream. Crack! Just a few sounds resounded. Wang Su felt he crushed Emo's hands and even heard the sound of bones breaking. He didn't even know when Emo took his hands away. He was shocked and regretted his actions. He thought that he used too much power and couldn't control it. He actually broke someone's hand. Su Mei and that yellow-haired girl called Jia Jia were also shocked. They didn't think Wang Su was cruel enough to actually break Emo's hands. The uncomfortable sound of bones cracking gave them goosebumps. "Ah, Wang Su brother, why did you break his hand?" He was invited by Sister Jingwen. Where's Emo? When Su Mei said this, she just realized Emo had disappeared. Wang Su also knew things had grown serious. He didn't think Emo was so fragile. He just shook his hand and didn't even use his full power. Yet Emo's hands broke. What was this? Hearing Sumei's exclaim, only then did he see that Emo had disappeared. But none of them actually saw when Emo left. He's just a deprecated student. Give him some money and tell him to go to the hospital himself. What a useless thing. The girl called Jia Jia said immediately. This valiant youth smiled bitterly. Now Sister Jean Gwen is going to tell me off. He definitely went in, I'll go and check up on him. Sigh. I didn't think his hand was so frail. Emo really didn't want to waste his time talking to these people who had nothing better to do. He came for Su Jingwen's birthday party, and having a conflict with the people here would only give Su Jingwen a hard time. However, he was also very satisfied with his bone retraction technique. Although his cultivation didn't progress much and was still only in the first stage of chi gathering, his mortal martial arts improved a lot. Emo didn't know what degree the strongest person in this world was, but since he couldn't cultivate normally, he might as well practice mortal martial arts to make himself stronger and safer. However, he knew that even if his martial arts were trained to the absolute limit, there were still all sorts of weapons from which he would not be safe. While the trio of Su Mei, Wang Su, and the other girl was still discussing Emo's injuries, Emo had already entered the building. There was still a waiter at the entrance to the door. He glanced at Emo's invitation and let him inside. There was already a lot of people. Su Jingwen made the event huge. It was probably to celebrate her mother's recovery, as well while meeting up with friends she hadn't been with for a long time. Emo, thanks for coming to my birthday. Come, sit over here. Su Jingwen saw Emo as soon as he came in and hurried to take Emo to a table. Of course. I said I would be coming, didn't I? Emo smiled and was ready to take out his present when he heard someone say, Ah, Jingwen, who is this handsome man? Is he your boyfriend? But when he saw Emo's normal vans and Emo's apparels, he stopped his latter half of the sentence and stuttered to say, his dressing is really unique. Su Jingwen was afraid that Emo would feel bad and hurried to say, he is my friend, Emo. Su Jingwen then realized that Emo was staring straight behind her back and didn't seem to hear what she said. She hurried to turn around. It was Ning Qingxue and Li Mumei walking over. Su Jingwen groaned to herself and thought, how could they have met so early? She didn't have the chance to explain things clearly to Emo yet. Emo looked as Ning Qingxue made her way over. This woman wore a faint yellow petticoat which struck him in his heart. Her silky black hair fell casually on her shoulders, rendering a sense of soft beauty, and her almond-shaped face didn't even have the slightest trace of makeup. She wore a deer-shaped hairpin in her hair, and a few strands of hair fell casually at the corner of her eye. Despite her sheer beauty, her eyes held an indescribable glimpse of worry and loss, and, when she walked over, it was as if a goddess was walking on the cloud. He was wondering why those searing eyes were so familiar to him. Those eyes filled with worry and loss. Could it be? Luo Ying. Yes, her eyes looked too similar to his master Luo Ying. Emo exhaled a long breath and came back to his senses. He knew this girl wasn't his master Luo Ying, but yet her eyes drew him in, just like Luo Ying's eyes. Emo's complexion returned to the calm he normally had. He didn't know Ning Qingxue. Meanwhile, Ning Qingxue had noticed this young man's looking at her. Although he had, like many other bachelors, lost himself in her appearance, he was different from other people. He carefully examined her but returned to his original calm. He wasn't like other people, removing their eyes from her with great difficulty and still taking peeks at her. Qingxue, Mumei, you guys came. Let me introduce. Su Jingwen wanted to introduce them to each other, but Li Mumei walked up to Su Jingwen and whispered, Don't introduce us here because Qingxue has never met Emo before. Su Jingwen immediately reacted. If Ning Qingxue didn't know Emo, then it really wasn't suitable to introduce them here. Sister Jingwen, something happened. Wang Su accidentally crushed Emo's hands, and we don't know where Emo is. Sume rushed in and said worriedly. But when she just said the first half of her sentence, she realized something was wrong since quite a few people were looking at her in astonishment. Just when she didn't understand what was happening, she saw Emo. Your hand. Su Jingwen looked at Emo, who appeared to be perfectly fine, and pointed to his hand in shock. Emo saw Su Mei and frowned. Jingwen, I'm going to rest for a while. After having said these few words, he just walked to the side and switched table. Emo? Ning Qingxue looked weirdly at Li Mumei, thinking who this Emo was. Li Mumei smiled bitterly as she pulled Ning Qingxue to the side and said, He is actually the Emo you were engaged to. It's just that he seems a bit different than before. Not only did his looks changed, but even his temperament is completely different than before. I don't know what happened to him, but I haven't seen him for a long time. It's just that I don't know why Jingwen would invite him over. He is Emo? Ning Qingxue subconsciously looked at Emo again. Emo's words and mannerism didn't seem cocky nor humble. Although he wore simple clothes, his mannerism was very natural and free-flowing. He didn't seem awkward at all and didn't have the temperament of spoilt rich kids. He even had a faint sense of manly charisma that she felt from a distance. How could someone like him be impotent? Ning Qingxue was beginning to hesitate. But then, she laughed at herself. If Emo really was this person, then she didn't even know if he would agree to her plans. Qingxue, I feel that he has changed a lot. I'll try to get some information from him first. You can sit down. When Li Mumei saw Emo, she suddenly felt hesitant towards her plan. The Emo in front of her eyes didn't seem similar to the useless person according to what people were saying. If they had to be picky, then it was that his hair was a bit messy and wasn't shaped by a professional hairdresser. Ning Qingxue grabbed Li Mumei's hand. Mumei, I should be the one to do these type of things. Emo saw that the people here were all wealthy, each wearing glamorous clothes. Comparatively, he was the most poorly dressed, but he wasn't ashamed. Instead, he was extremely calm. When someone was at a different altitude in life, their mindset was completely different, and they remained unaffected by wealth and glamour. Even if Emo had those glamorous clothes, he would still live his life according to his style. His interests weren't on these things, but if it were, he was confident that he would become a wealthy man everyone admired. And then what? Life was short anyway, barely a few decades. You don't bring anything when you are born, and you won't bring anything with you when you die. His only goal used to be achieving eternal life. Although cultivation had become slow, his intent had not changed. However, now he had an extra concern for his master Luoying. Her feelings for him were undeniable, and his for hers too. As for other things, they were all just like passing clouds to him. Emo. Ning Qingxue came beside Emo's table and called out. Her slightly shaky tone betrayed mixed feelings. You can sit. Emo smiled faintly. Ning Qingxue suddenly had a feeling of old familiarity, even though she knew it was her first time seeing Emo. Thanks. Ning Qingxue sat down and suddenly felt a feeling of easiness or a type of serenity. Emo was like a calm lake, making her feel safe at heart. Your eyebrows are knitted so tightly, and your eyes look fatigued. Is there something troubling your heart? If I can help you, I'm willing to. Emo obviously knew that a girl like Ning Qingxue wouldn't come and talk to a man she broke a marriage pact with for no reason. Since she came, she must have had something on her mind, so he might as well bring it up first. And although her conversation with Li Mumei was quiet, Emo still heard it. He just couldn't have imagined that his fiancée was such a beautiful woman, almost as pretty as Luoying. He didn't have a negative impression of Ning Qingxue, or rather, he didn't feel anything towards her. But when he saw Ning Qingxue's troubled eyes, he was reminded of Luoying. Ning Qingxue looked at Emo in surprise. She was astonished at Emo's meticulous insights and his clear thinking. This is the useless good-for-nothing kid that his family would abandon? Ning Qingxue thought about it for some time but found it had to articulate. She just sighed and thought, if only Li Mumei came to say it. Emo sat opposite her and didn't feel the slightest pressure, but instead gave her a sense of serenity and peace. Ning Qingxue finally made up her mind and said, It's because of my marriage. However, this time the indifferent Emo frowned, and there was finally a ripple in his heart. It was his first time interrupting Ning Qingxue's words. Your Ning family has already broken our marriage pact, and now, I'm not a member of the Beijing Yi family anymore. Yemo didn't finish his sentence, but his meaning was clear. It meant that he could help with anything but issues concerning marriage. It was her family that first broke off the marriage, and coming crawling back to him now was crossing the line. Although he had a good impression of Ning Qingxue, it didn't mean that Ning Qingxue could be exempted on this matter. I'm sorry. Ning Qingxue suddenly felt helpless. Yemo smiled faintly. You don't need to be sorry. I'm a good-for-nothing person kicked out by the Yi family. I'm not a suitable match for your Ning family anyway, and breaking the marriage pact holds certain freedom for me. I don't mean to reproach you for that. I just don't want to talk about it. Ning Qingxue suddenly felt uneasy in her heart. If she had heard these words before meeting Yemo, then she would pretend otherwise. But after seeing Yemo, she felt that her contemptuous views towards Yemo and her subconscious feeling that Yemo was not a match for her were laughable. The current Yemo appeared to have nothing but his plain and confident temperament and his open-minded outlook. It was a far cry from the Yemo in her memory. It was as though he wasn't the same Yemo that owned nothing, but a Yemo who had a condescending look on the world and stood at the peak of the clouds. This feeling made Ning Qingxue uneasy. Yemo sighed. He knew that Ning Qingxue had her troubles, but since it wasn't something he could solve, then there was nothing he could do. Thinking about that, he said, since Ning Qingxue seemed to know what Yemo wanted to see. She bit her lips and interrupted Yemo's words. Tonight, I want to go to? She suddenly felt a satisfying pleasure for interrupting Yemo's words. It was as though the discomfort she felt when Yemo interrupted her had dissipated. But Ning Qingxue didn't think that her words were also interrupted. Qingxue, it really is you? I didn't think I would see you during Jingwen's birthday party. This is such a surprise. As soon as these words were said, a youth carrying half a glass of red wine had appeared beside Yemo's table. Ning Qingxue frowned and didn't speak. This youth was decent-looking, but his eyes were very fidgety. He saw Yemo on his first glance but ignored him. This was because Yemo didn't even seem like a guest or even a waiter. Move over. I haven't seen Qingxue for a long time. This fidgety-eyed youth walked in front of Yemo and ordered him. Zhao Hong, sorry. I'm busy right now. Please sit somewhere else. Ning Qingxue was annoyed since she finally summoned the courage to say what she wanted but was interrupted. Zhao Hong looked at Yemo in surprise and was wondering how this poor-looking person, who somehow found his way in here, could be connected to Ning Qingxue. Hello? I'm Zhao Hong. I just came back from Cambridge University, and I'll be staying at the Ninghai government office for now. If you have any trouble in Ninghai, just come to me. I can help you with the trivial stuff. Zhao Hong didn't leave just because of Ning Qingxue's words and instead extended his hands elegantly. For him, shaking hands with Yemo was due to Ning Qingxue. Although he didn't know why Ning Qingxue was talking to this person, he just wanted to get a good impression from Ning Qingxue. What took Zhao Hong by surprise was that Yemo casually took a fruit from the waiter's plate and didn't even seem to see Zhao Hong's hands. Zhao Hong's face reddened and awkwardly dropped his hand. He glared at Yemo and was just regretting extending his hand when Wang Su came over. Brother, you're quite something. Your move even tricked me. Nice technique. This is my number. We must have a talk sometimes. Wang Su patted Yemo's shoulder excitedly as soon as he came and gave him a name card with only his phone number. Yemo had a good first impression of Wang Su. He felt Wang Su was a decent person and could become friends. So once he heard Wang Su say this, he also smiled and said, sure, gladly. Ning Qingxue saw Yemo's completely opposite attitudes towards two different people and seemed to be thinking about it. Brother Su, you are here. Hehe. Zhao Hong saw Wang Su and laughed awkwardly. Fake foreigner. Why did you come back? Aren't you supposed to be in England? Wang Su's words were very straightforward. Zhao Hong said awkwardly, I have already graduated. I am now working in the government office at Ninghai City. I didn't think Brother Su had the time to come too. It was conveniently on the way for me to Ninghai. After Wang Su had responded to Zhao Hong, he turned to Yemo and said, Brother Yi, you must remember to call me later on. Oh, gimme your number too. He doesn't have a phone. Su Jingwen's voice came here in time. Yemo laughed bitterly in his heart. No matter where he sat, there would be a lot of people surrounding him quickly. He didn't like this boisterous environment. He had the urge to give Su Jingwen her present and leave. Jingwen, happy birthday to you. I brought this diamond necklace from England just for you. I hope you will like it. Zhao Hong saw he was starting to be neglected from the conversation, and hurried out to take his present. Thank you, Zhao Hong. After saying a few words, Su Jingwen took the necklace and gave it to the female servant in the background. As Zhao Hong saw that Su Jingwen didn't give his gift a second thought, a glimpse of disappointment flashed across his eyes. Sister Jingwen, I also brought something for you. Sume noticed the situation and immediately gave out a set of cosmetics products. At this moment, the guests all started giving their gifts, but many people already gave their presents at the door. Those who came in to give her the gifts were all Su Jingwen's good friends. Even Ning Qingxue gave an exquisite chest brooch. Emo then realized that, although he deemed his present to be the most precious, its look compared to other people's presents was barely acceptable. However, at this moment, Su Jingwen had to look full of hope at him. Emo smiled bitterly. He took out the bracelet he made from his pocket and gave it to Su Jingwen as he said, I made this myself. I know it's a bit shabby, and I apologize, but I didn't have the money to buy something more expensive. The bracelet was made of 6 pea-sized beads scattered loosely at different places. It was easily discernible that the jade had a crappy quality and obviously didn't look good. Everyone around them looked at Emo's gift in surprise and thought, even if you didn't have money, a random piece of jewelry would still look better than this weird bracelet you made yourself. The beads are ugly, perhaps it was even made from a fake piece of jade. If that was true, then this bracelet was only worth a few dollars, which was much cheaper than any finished good. PFFF. Some people in the crowd finally couldn't hold it in and laughed. This guy really was unique. Not only did he wear poor clothes, but also gave such a poor presents. This present is really unique, probably the only one that exists in the world. Zhao Hong saw Emo offering this gift and finally found a chance to ridicule Emo. Su Jingwen rolled her eyes towards Zhao Hong, but happily accepted Emo's bracelet while she wore it joyfully on her wrist. Thank you. Thank you for making a present for me yourself. I really like this bracelet. Does it have a name? Emo smiled and said, I named it the 6 Harmony. 6 Harmony? This name is really quite unique. Sume looked at the sanguine Su Jingwen and wanted to say something about Emo but resisted the urge to. Ning Qingxue saw Emo giving such a cheap present yet still had a calm face without any sign of uneasiness. And when she looked at Su Jingwen's joy of receiving the present, Ning Qingxue suddenly felt a weird feeling that she couldn't explain. Soft music played and the first dance was coming. Just when everyone started guessing who Su Jingwen would get to dance with her for the first song, Su Jingwen looked at Emo and said, Emo, would you dance with me for this tune? He is Emo? Zhao Hong obviously heard about the things between Emo and Ning Qingxue, and his expression became weird. From Su Jingwen accepting Emo's present and wearing it on her hand to inviting Emo to dance with her. Even those who didn't know Su Jingwen knew that Emo was probably someone Su Jingwen pushed out to be a shield. It was to defend against those who wanted to dance with her tonight. However, Ning Qingxue didn't think this way. She felt that Su Jingwen genuinely wanted to invite Emo to dance. Although she didn't know why Su Jingwen would do something like this, there was an unreasonable feeling of annoyance in her heart. She immediately felt confused about her feelings. Emo also didn't think Su Jingwen would invite him to this gathering for this and said awkwardly, Unfortunately, I don't know how to dance at all. Su Jingwen became dazed for a moment. She considered everything else except for the fact that Emo couldn't dance. Although Emo was abandoned by the Yi family, he was still once a young master there, and he was a student of Ninghai University. How could he not know how to dance? Only Li Mume knew that Emo really didn't know how to dance. In the past, although Emo was boastful, he never seemed to go to the dance floors or clubs. He barely had any friends and only liked to show off and be arrogant. I can teach you, Su Jingwen responded. She also knew this was an excuse, but she would find it hard to reject if someone else offered to dance with her first. Of course, as soon as Su Jingwen said those words, the surrounding people looked at her. Teach him to dance? Could this be learned in such a short moment? Jingwen, how about this? The first dance is about to begin. I'll dance with you first, and I'll call a few professional dancers to teach Emo how to dance later. The one speaking was Wang Peng. When did he come? Emo thought as he looked at Wang Peng, whose eyes were watching him back coldly. The warning was obvious in his eyes. However, Emo became vigilant. It was not because Wang Peng showed animosity towards him, but because Wang Peng's hands were healed. Emo knew his technique. He left a sliver of Kai inside Wang Peng's bones and, with the modern medical standards, there was no method to remove it. If he wanted to have his wrist completely cured, he needed a master who had already cultivated Qi or a cultivator that cultivated Qi. There were masters like this. It looked like he needed to be careful in the future. He didn't know what the masters here were capable of, so he had to stay vigilant. Although there didn't seem to be any cultivators here, who could be sure? He was a cultivator hidden in the city himself. And even normal cultivators were no match for some people who cultivate mortal martial arts to the absolute limit. Although Emo cultivated both, he still didn't dare to be careless. After all, his powers were still relatively low. No need, Emo? Let me teach you. Su Jingwen immediately refused Wang Peng's suggestion and did not take her eyes off Emo, who smiled faintly. If Wang Peng hadn't arrived, he would have probably said that he was not able to learn it in such a short time. But since Wang Peng came and targeted him, Emo wouldn't back down. Okay. You don't need to teach me. Just tell me once. Hearing Emo's words, Wang Peng was even more annoyed at Emo. He can learn it just by being told once? No one would believe that. Even Su Jingwen didn't believe him, but she only needed Emo to complete the dance with her. She didn't really think that Emo only needed to be told once to learn it without any practice. However, since Emo had already said that, Su Jingwen explained to him the moves of the waltz and even showed him a few moves. That's enough. Seeing Su Jingwen had finished, Emo smiled and stopped her. At this time, the first dance music was already beginning. Everyone looked at Emo and Su Jingwen walking into the dance pit. They wanted to see how Emo would perform, and some people were waiting to see Emo be embarrassed. Ning Qingxue looked at Emo. She had a feeling that Emo's smile meant that he was confident on the matter. Emo grabbed Su Jingwen's hand, and a faint aroma wafted to his nose, engulfing him in a complex, indescribable feeling. Other than the moment he fled with his master, he had never been so close to any woman. His heart started to beat faster. Although Luoying carried him to escape in his last life, that moment was too short and didn't even have the chance to react before he fell unconscious. Today, it was different, for he was grabbing Su Jingwen's hand and even moving with the music. Emo, you cheated me. You said you didn't know how to dance, but your dance moves are perfectly fine. I won't believe that you could dance so well with me just telling you once. When Su Jingwen started to dance with Emo, she immediately felt that Emo's was not someone dancing for the first time. His moves were agiler and more in sync with the music than hers. Emo didn't explain why he would know just by being told once. It was useless to even if he did anyway. Could he tell Su Jingwen that he had spirit sense? These moves were way too simplistic compared to what he cultivated. Instead, he just asked, "Do you often dance?" Emo held on to Su Jingwen's hand and passed on his body temperature. Occasionally she would brush against Emo's body. Su Jingwen felt like she was playing with fire. The masculine charisma from Emo's body made her feel lost. Yet his light breath on her made her feel great calmness. Was he really a student? Everyone around saw Emo and Su Jingwen dancing moves charged with chemistry, and everyone came to the realization that this Emo was only pretending not to know how to dance. In this era, which young master didn't know how to dance? Wang Peng's face was pale with fury as he felt played and cheated. This made him very annoyed, and soon, he put Emo in the same position in his heart as the person who sold the charms. A gruesome fate would await him. Ning Qingxue looked quietly at Emo and Su Jingwen's synchronized dance moves as she listened to the soft music. It was unknown what she was thinking, but her face seemed calm. After the tune was over, Su Jingwen appeared to linger in the mood, but after hearing the claps around her, she realized the song was over yet couldn't help but reminisce. The music started playing again, and everyone began to look for a dance partner as they entered the dance pit. Just when Wang Peng wanted to invite Su Jingwen again to dance, he suddenly saw Ning Qingxue, and his eyes immediately brightened up. He hurriedly walked over and asked, "Hello, my name is Wang Peng. May I have the honor to dance with you?" Ning Qingxue looked coldly at Wang Peng and didn't even reply. Instead, she walked in front of Yemo and said, "Yemo, I didn't have the chance to finish what I was saying before. Could we continue this conversation?" Wang Peng became even angrier, and his face grew paler. Su Jingwen already knew that Ning Qingxue and Yemo had broken their marriage pact, but she didn't know why Ning Qingxue kept asking for Yemo. Was there something else? Just when Su Jingwen wanted to say something, Li Mumei walked over and pulled Su Jingwen. "Jingwen, I have some things I need to talk to you about. Let's go." Seeing Su Jingwen, who was already far away, Yemo looked at Ning Qingxue and said, "Okay, we'll sit for a while on the side." Yemo was originally planning to leave after finishing this dance, but could only stay due to Ning Qingxue. Wang Peng looked at the beautiful goddess-like Ning Qingxue being taken away by Yemo. Although he was livid, there was nothing he could do. All he could think about was when he would teach this guy a harsh lesson. After finding a far-off corner to sit, Yemo spoke straightforwardly. "I'm no longer a member of the Yi family in Beijing. We are now two people from two worlds. What do you need me to do?" Ning Qingxue stayed quiet for quite a while before saying, "Yemo, I don't want to say it here. Could we go to where you live tonight? I'm sorry, but I really need your help." "What?" Yemo thought he heard wrong. A girl like Ning Qingxue would take the initiative to ask to go to his place at night? No matter what it was, this didn't seem to be right. "What? Qingxue wants to marry Yemo? How is this possible?" Su Jingwen was also shocked by Li Mumei's words. She didn't think that Ning Qingxue had such a crazy idea. Her first reaction was actually to oppose the decision, and Li Mumei looked at Su Jingwen with some degree of shock to her response to the situation. Su Jingwen also seemed to realize that her reaction was inappropriate and ridiculed herself. "I'm only saying Qingxue is such an excellent girl. How could she, or rather, why would she decide to marry Yemo? Even if she wanted to avoid the marriage arranged by her family, she shouldn't do that to herself." Li Mumei sighed and replied, "It's because Yemo is disabled that Qingxue would make such a decision. Sister Qingxue is really unfortunate. However, today I saw Yemo, and he is completely different from the Yemo in my memories. I had no idea a person could change so much. If he weren't kicked out of the Yi family and didn't have a problem with his body, then everything would be perfect." Su Jingwen sunk back into silence. She didn't know why, but unconsciously, she just wanted to disagree with Yemo marrying Ning Qingxue. But she couldn't find any reason. Was it just because he danced with me today? Or was it because he looked like that master who sold me the charms? What's wrong? Jingwen. Li Mumei saw Su Jingwen become silent and hurriedly ask, "Huh? Oh, nothing. I was just wondering if maybe I could help with something?" Su Jingwen was dragged back into the reality by Li Mumei. Li Mumei didn't know why Su Jingwen's mind always wandered off, so she could only say, "I will send you some photos of Ning Qingxue and Yemo sleeping together in pajamas to you. You just need to find an entertainment media outlet to release them, and then find some journalists to interview them about their marriage." Su Jingwen looked at Li Mumei with her eyes wide open and said after a while, "You thought of such a wicked idea? You will damage Qingxue's reputation." Li Mumei sighed once again before responding, "Even if her reputation was damaged, it is better than being in the hands of Song Shaoan. Your Su family is also in Beijing. I think you know what sort of hungry wolf Song Shaoan is. If Sister Qingxue had a choice, do you think that she would want to do this?" Su Jingwen already knew what sort of person Song Shaoan was. Saying he was bad was the understatement of the year. He was a demon that ate humans without spitting the bones, and countless girls in Beijing suffered in his hands. She also understood why Ning Qingxue would make this decision. After a few moments of thinking, Su Jingwen replied, "However, this way, wouldn't Yemo be the victim? He's innocent here. I also know that he is innocent, and initially I thought that by giving him some money he would be glad to do it. But I almost couldn't recognize the Yemo of today compared to the Yemo from the past. Could a person really change this much after experiencing hardship? I can no longer be of any help with this situation. We can only wait and see if Emo wishes to help Ning Qingxue, and if he doesn't, then there's nothing we can do anymore, Li Mumei said helplessly. Su Jingwen opened her mouth but eventually didn't say anything. At this moment, both of them were silent. What would be so important to you that we would have to go where I live for you to say it? Can't you say it here? Emo looked at her with surprise. Ning Qingxue lowered her head. She couldn't bear to explain the plan to Emo. If Emo didn't agree to Li Mumei's plan, would leaving the country even work? After thinking for a while, she grounded her teeth and said, I want to go to your place tonight because there's something I have to talk you about privately. Seeing how she suddenly popped this sentence with tightly frowned eyebrows, Emo sighed. Although he didn't know Ning Qingshue's intentions, he seemed to see his master before him with tightly knit eyebrows like that. So he said helplessly, Fine, you can come with me. We will leave in a moment, but please just wait for me a little. I have to say goodbye to Su Jingwen first. You agreed. Ning Qingxue stood up in pleasant surprise. The first time she saw Emo, she was prepared to be rejected by him, since he was completely different from what Li Mumei told her. She didn't think Emo would agree so easily. Jingwen, I'm going. Qingxue has some issues she would like to discuss and is coming with me. Just when Emo stood up, he saw Su Jingwen walk over with another girl. He seemed to have seen that girl before but didn't have any impression of her. Li Mumei saw that Emo didn't even seem to notice her, as if he didn't know her. She thought to herself that he had definitely changed. Ah? Emo, you agreed. Su Jingwen looked at Ning Qingxue and Emo with a weird look. After her reply, she then realized why she would ask something like that. Meanwhile, Emo looked at the three girls' expressions and understood that there had to be something he didn't know. Yet he just smiled faintly. Even if there was something he didn't know, he, Emo, wasn't afraid of anything. When Ning Qingxue took her luggage case and went on the taxi with Emo, she suddenly experienced a weird feeling. From the moment she walked on the streets with Emo, it seemed as though all the pressure and worry in her heart were gone and was suddenly relieved. This place is where you live? Ning Qingxue had an immediate sense of pleasantry after seeing Emo residing in a house with a yard. This place was soundless, and the environment was very elegant. He really knew how to find places and discovered such a good place to live. Emo smiled and said, Yeah, it cannot, however, compare with where you live. It's a bit shabby. Ning Qingxue shook her head and said, No, I really like it here. Emo, you're finally back? Let me tell you, last time you went. Who is she? When Sue first glanced upon Ning Qingxue, she was shocked by Ning Qingshue's beauty. She always thought she had been good-looking, but compared with Ning Qingxue, she was like an ugly duck. This Zhai Nen could actually bring home such a beautiful girl? You really couldn't judge people by their appearances, but Emo didn't seem to be ugly either. Ning Qingxue also saw Sue and, as she noticed that the girl gave people a refreshing feeling, she thought, Emo's tastes are not bad. No wonder he was hesitating whether he should take me home. It was because he already had a girl he was living with. Ning Qingxue even started to wonder if Emo was a natural playboy, but suddenly realized that her thoughts were a bit revolting. She didn't really care about these things. She only came to get married to him. Wait, wouldn't this girl be opposed to that? Ning Qingxue suddenly felt uneasy. The atmosphere was a bit awkward, and just when the two girls thought Emo could help them introduce each other, Emo walked inside first. Ning Qingxue looked at Su Wei but could only follow Emo and walk inside. You can sleep in my room tonight. If you have something that you want to tell me, you can do it now, Emo told her as he brought Ning Qingxue to his room. Huh. Then where are you going to sleep tonight? Ning Qingxue came planning to sleep in the same room as Emo but on the couch. She only needed people to know she was sleeping in the same room as Emo. However, when she asked this, she immediately felt it was inappropriate. It wasn't because she was shy. She was already prepared and wasn't embarrassed about it. She just suddenly remembered the girl at the door. She didn't think Emo already had a girlfriend and was living with her. In her eyes, if they weren't in a relationship, they had no reason to live together. Ning Qingxue didn't have the concept of renting a place together in her mind. No need. I have a place to stay, Emo said casually. Sorry. Emo, did I cause misunderstandings with your girlfriend? Ning Qingxue asked uneasily. Her words were also meant to test and see if that girl was his girlfriend or not. Emo waved his hand calmly and didn't bother explaining to Ning Qingxue, as he felt that he didn't need to. Instead, he said, You have something to tell me. Now that we're here, you can say it. Seeing that Emo didn't deny, Ning Qingxue sighed. He had a girlfriend, and she knew this thing couldn't be done. However, he didn't seem to be living with her. Now that she came, she instead gave him the opportunity to live with his girlfriend. Because I want to get married to you? Ning Qingxue couldn't find a proper way to put it, so she just said it straight out. What took her by surprise was that Emo didn't seem shocked at all. Emo's appearance did make Ning Qingxue feel strange. She saw that Emo was very calm and didn't say a word. So a moment later, she asked quietly, Aren't you curious? Don't you want to ask me why? Although the current Emo wasn't extremely calculative, how could Ning Qingxue hide her thoughts from him? From the time when Wang Ying told him that Ning Qingxue was using him to stop others from proposing to her, to how she asked to come to his house at night and even asked to get married to him, he had already connected these things and analyzed them. Emo immediately knew that Ning Qingxue was asking to use him as a shield again. Seeing Emo's calm expression while remaining silent, Ning Qingxue was feeling more unrest and asked guiltily, I won't obstruct you and your girlfriend. I just need everyone else to know that we are living together and even got married. I will explain it to your girlfriend. As he expected, she wanted to use him as a shield again. Losing his interest, Emo waved his hand and said, You don't need to explain it to other people. This thing has nothing to do with Su Wei. She doesn't have any business with you. Although hesitating for a moment and wanting to reject, Emo saw Ning Qingxue's tragic eyes and was a bit moved. Although this woman had the intention to use him, she didn't hide it. Furthermore, Emo didn't even care if he was used in this way. The main reason that prompted Emo to help her was her sorrowful eyes that made his heart beat faster. Although he didn't know what happened to Ning Qingxue, since she was forced to make such a decision, it meant that what was about to happen to her wasn't something she could bear with. I can pay money. I won't make you help out for nothing. Seeing that Emo was hesitating, Ning Qingxue hurried to add the words, Fine, I agree. When we get the marriage certificate is up to you. However, I don't want you to go around telling people my identity. Emo's reply was very plain, as if talking about something completely irrelevant to himself. Ning Qingxue looked at Emo surprised by joy. She didn't think that Emo would agree to her words without asking her any questions. Regardless of what Emo thought, she was still grateful towards him. As for Emo's last sentence, she took it as not allowing her to tell Su Wei. This card contained $500,000. You can use that for now. The password is 575757. Ning Qingxue took out a card and gave it to Emo. Emo took the card and laughed at himself as he said, Very well. Since you have paid now, this is a business deal between us. When you feel the agreement is over, you can leave yourself. I'm going to rest now. Seeing Emo's desolate back figure, Ning Qingxue's heart suddenly squeezed. It was as though she did something wrong. What did she do wrong? Ning Qingxue was sitting on Emo's bed and was lost in thought. Perhaps what she felt wrong was Emo agreeing due to the money, which meant that Mume was right about him. When Emo walked out of his room, Su Wei had already gone into hers. He held the credit card as waves erupted in his heart. The instant he took the credit card, he had the urge to throw the card in her face and tell her to piss off. The only reason he let Ning Qingxue come in and even help her was due to the striking resemblance between his helpless master and Ning Qingxue's eyes filled with melancholy. Shaking his head, he started wondering to himself what Ning Qingxue did wrongly. Probably in her mind, she thought that what she did was right. Anyway, he already gave his room to Ning Qingxue, so Emo had nowhere to go. Luckily, he had always been cultivating on the north side of the yard, which was near the back. In this spot, there was an old tree, and every time Emo cultivated under it, he felt more peaceful. Emo sat under the tree cultivating for an entire night. He felt his chi getting stronger and couldn't help but to smile faintly. All the annoyance from last night had dissipated and, from today onwards, he decided that it would be pretty good to cultivate here each night. It looked like people needed to be pushed to be motivated. Before Ning Qingshui could even discuss when they would get married, Yemo went straight to school. When Yemo had already run to the school, Ning Qingshui and Su Wei finally got up. After they had greeted as they saw each other, both of them became a bit shy. For them, Yemo was sleeping with the other the night before. Perhaps it was more strange for Ning Qingshui as she knew that Yemo was impotent and wondered how he could sleep with someone. But obviously, she would be too embarrassed to ask such a question. After studying for half the day in the library, Yemo went to the dorms and slept during the whole afternoon. At night, he was dragged by Xianxia to the restaurant for food. The main reason was that he still got a free coupon for the Juwei restaurant at the school. Yemo, you were really cool yesterday. Did you know? After you had left, Yen Yen was so angry that her face was pale. If it wasn't for Merciless Bing who helped her out, I think she would have tried to find a hole in the ground to crawl into. By the way, who was the woman that came for you yesterday? She was really pretty. Could she be a star? No, even a star isn't as pretty as her, Xianxia said with a face full of excitement. He would only make such an exaggerated expression with Yemo. Yemo smiled as he patted Xianxia's shoulders and said, I've slept the whole afternoon, and I'm hungry already. Let's go eat. Xianxia suddenly sighed and said, Yemo, to be honest, I'm concerned about you. Aren't you worried yourself at all? We're almost graduating, but you already had to retake the exams last semester. You probably can't even get a graduation certificate, much less a degree, and yet you still sleep every day, Sai. Yemo said in disagreement. Is there any use in worrying? If worrying were useful, I would worry every day. Put your mind at ease, I have my way. If you graduate and can't find a job, you can come to me. I'll be responsible for getting you a job and get you fed. Pfft. Never mind. What I want is not just a job that will get me fed. My relative says that he can help me find a job at a government department. I bet you are jealous. Let's go. I can already smell the aroma of Juwei restaurant. Xianxia quickly pulled Yemo into Juwei restaurant. Juwei restaurant was the most famous restaurant in Ninghai University. The dishes were excellent and had a particular taste. Although it wasn't as good as Westlake Family's, Yemo still liked their style. Xianxia only had a $200 coupon, but that was enough for the two of them. Although Yemo was close with Xianxia, they barely had the chance to eat together. Yemo asked for another 2 bottles of white wine, and the two kept eating until 7 to 8 p.m. Xianxia was a lightweight, and the 2 bottles of wine were pretty much all consumed by Yemo. When Yemo took the tipsy Xianxia and left Juwei restaurant, he actually saw Zhang Wenxiao who went to the toilet. Although it was just his back, how powerful were Yemo's eyes. He knew it was him already. He was attacked by this guy last time, and although he didn't suffer any losses, he remained very unsatisfied inside. Now that he saw this man again, how could he let him go? He hurriedly dumped Xianxia on the dorm bed before immediately coming back outside Juwei restaurant and waited. He estimated that this Zhang Wenxiao's family had some power, so when he would be teaching him a lesson, he had to cover his face. If it were only according to Yemo's will, he would have killed him straight away, but he also knew that if he murdered Zhang Wenxiao, he would most likely become the suspect number 1. Therefore, it would be best to beat him until he can't manage to live his own life. Yemo didn't wait very long before seeing Zhang Wenxiao leave Juwei restaurant speaking on the phone. Zhang Wenxiao went in his BMW and drove towards a far-off place, unaware that Yemo was following him. Soon the car stopped as a 40-or-so-year-old man who was carrying a woman rushed at the BMW while Zhang Wenxiao hurried out of the car and went to help him. What made Yemo surprised was that he knew the woman. The woman, carried by both Zhang Wenxiao and the other man, was Yun Bing, who was also known as Merciless Bing, Yemo's English teacher. Why would Yun Bing be waiting for Zhang Wenxiao here? Yemo was astonished, but he didn't keep it on his mind. It looked like Yun Bing was drunk or something and needed people to hold her. Under the dim yellow streetlight, Zhang Wenxiao quickly carried Yun Bing into his BMW. Although he didn't know what the relationship between Yun Bing and Zhang Wenxiao was, Being carried into the car drunk like that was definitely not right. However, Emo didn't have a good impression of Yunbing and wouldn't care about what happened to her. Today, he was here to take care of Xianxia. The BMW spewed exhaust gases and drove off while Emo followed behind secretly. Luckily, they were in the city, and the speed limit wasn't high. Right now, Emo's cloud shadow step was at a high enough level that he could keep up with the car. More than 10 minutes later, the BMW drove into a quiet district. However, Emo couldn't go in from the main entrance. After making sure there were no cameras around, Emo jumped over a wall into the small living district and kept his eyes on the BMW from a distance. He quickly saw the car stopping outside a building. Zhan Wenxiao and the other man hurriedly carried Yunbing up the stairs, but Emo could only watch from below as he was only in the first stage of qi gathering. If he was in stage 3, he could follow them with an invisibility art. However, if he followed now he would be seen, and it wasn't suitable to teach Zhan Wenxiao a lesson in the stairways. It would be better inside. Emo waited down there for some time, and before long, a light in a room on the 4th floor lit up. Emo immediately knew where they went and didn't hesitate to climb up through the window, and soon, he entered the lit-up room through the kitchen. "Young Master Chow, I am ready." Hearing that voice, Emo knew this was the other man talking. "Start when I go on this woman. Remember to film it clearly and capture all the specifics, especially when she moans. I want all of it. I don't believe that she won't cooperate after all that." After Zhan Wenxiao's words, Emo heard a ripping sound, like clothes being shred. So, these two want to gang rape Merciless Bing and also want to record it. He wondered whether she had had a conflict with the two in the past or if she had some incriminating evidence against them in her hands for the situation to be like that. Emo originally thought the ripping move was done by Zhan Wenxiao, but when he kicked the door open, he found out the shredding movement was made by Yunbing herself. Yunbing's face was ruddy and steaming, and it was obvious that she was under the influence of some potent aphrodisiacs. She had already ripped off half the clothes in front of her chest, showing 2 snow-white balls that were firm and plump, and even Emo was a bit phased after seeing them. "Who are you?" As Emo kicked open the door, Zhan Wenxiao and the cameraman were immediately frightened. However, when they saw a single man walking in with a covered face, they immediately gasped a sigh of relief. Zhan Wenxiao was aware that the man behind him knew martial arts and was quite proficient at it. "Friend, what do you want to do? If you just want money, we don't need to cross paths, and we can let you play after we finish enjoying ourselves. This is a high-quality woman." Zhan Wenxiao was wary of Emo as he was talking. At the same time, he was putting back on the clothes he was about to take off. "Human scum." Emo just spoke 2 words and kicked Zhan Wenxiao, whose hand was still on the button, when he was sent flying by Emo, crashing into the wall. When he fell down, he immediately fainted. The middle-aged cameraman saw this masked person attacking with dexterity, so he immediately threw his camera aside and took out a knife from his waist, stabbing towards Emo. His moves were reasonably agile. However, his opponent was Emo. In Emo's eyes, this guy was even worse than Feng Weiqing, who wanted to fight him in the park last time. He made 2 consecutive kicks and used only 1 move to send flying this person, who Zhan Wenxiao thought was quite powerful. While the middle-aged man flew, he sent the camera beside him flying into the ceiling and crashed, shattering into pieces. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man fell on top of Zhan Wenxiao. "Hold it, friend. Do you know who he is? He is the son of Mayor Zhang. Aren't you afraid?" This middle-aged man was kicked to the ground and yet still wanted to threaten him. Emo sneered and kicked this man on the head. He fainted promptly, as if on command. Emo looked at the room. On the wall hung a picture of Yunbing, and another one was of her carrying a little girl. He thought that this was Yunbing's room and that Zhan Wenxiao was really sinister. If he had done these things with Yunbing in her room and made it into a video, Yunbing would likely be forced to suicide or to comply with Wenxiao's every need. He wondered what Zhan Wenxiao wanted from Yunbing. It couldn't be just purely wanting to go in bed with her. Emo didn't want to bother with these things and carried the unconscious middle-aged man and Zhan Wenxiao. He didn't want to teach them a lesson in her room, and Yunbing didn't look very appropriate. Just when Emo walked to the door, Yunbing's moan sounded, and there was another ripping sound of clothes. Emo turned around and saw Yunbing had stripped down to 3 spots that were barely covered. The almost completely nude Yunbing laying on the bed with her almost uncovered 3 spots and her pink translucent underwear made Emo's heart beat really fast. However, Emo immediately knew things weren't right. The aphrodisiac Yunbing was under seemed to be too potent. He estimated that without sex, her body would probably be greatly damaged or even debilitated, and cursed at how evil Xianxia was. Emo looked at Yunbing's white yet ruddy-looking body and sighed. He dumped the 2 men outside and walked next to Yunbing's bed, as he wanted to help her push out the remaining drug power. However, just when Emo walked in front of the bed, he was bear-hugged by Yunbing like how a drowning person clutched to a wooden stump. The soft and aromatic body pushed into Emo's arms, and Emo uncontrollably felt aroused. Yunbing seemed to exhale a comfortable breath and scratched Emo's back with her fingers. She kept pushing her body onto Emo as though she was pushing herself inside Emo. Emo's heart was burning with fire, but he was already in the first stage of chi gathering. After the short temptation, he immediately reacted and palmed Yunbing's head. With the use of chi, a faint aroma of gas was pulled out of Yunbing's body. As Emo continued to use chi to pull out the aphrodisiac component in Yunbing's body, Yunbing gradually settled down. After a long time, Emo was full of sweat but finally managed to push out the remaining components from her body. He was relieved and took down the black clothes to wipe the sweat from his head. However, Yunbing woke up coincidentally at this exact moment. Abruptly, she felt she was almost completely nude and opened her eyes in horror, seeing Emo, who was wiping his sweat, and, under embarrassment and rage, she fainted once again. Emo was fatigued and didn't realize that Yunbing had already woken up once. He pulled a quilt over Yunbing's body and said to her, "You've been lucky today. With your attitude towards me, I didn't want to save you, but I'm in a good mood today." Emo closed the door and once again carried the middle-aged man and Xianxia and left. He stripped bare Xianxia and the middle-aged man and beat them up. Then he kicked them till their private areas were busted before dumping them on the back seat of the car, stacked on top of each other. Then, he drove the BMW away until he came to the Genesis Square, and parked it in a frequented and conspicuous place. Before he left, he didn't forget to leave all the windows open. Emo went out for the whole day while Xianxia was getting a bit worried in the yard. She was planning to get the marriage certificate that day, but Emo still hadn't returned. It was as though he had forgotten what he agreed to her. When Suwei and Xianxia saw each other in the morning, it was a bit awkward. Suwei didn't know how Emo found such a stunning girl like Xianxia, and what this beautiful woman could be possibly thinking. Living together with someone as poor as Emo before marriage, that just goes to show that you really couldn't judge someone by their appearance. Although Emo was quite a good person in Suwei's impression, Xianxia seemed to be way out of his league. Xianxia's thoughts were similar to Suwei's. She thought about why Suwei was living together with Emo, since he was known to have a problem concerning his more intimate life. However, she couldn't really ask this, and both of them thought they were in the right. Seeing that Suwei had gone to work, Xianxia felt uncomfortable staying in this unfamiliar yard by herself. However, she waited for a long time for Emo to no avail. She saw there were many flowers cultivated in Emo's yard. Originally, she thought it was Suwei who was responsible, but they seemed to be planted on Emo's side. Xianxia looked at those flowers and discovered one of them with a silver grass, which seemed to be cared for very well. There were no flowers or grass nearby its spot and had a very large place all to itself. She walked around the yard for a while before going back to the room. Emo's room was simple. Other than a bed, there was just a desk. The only thing she didn't understand was that there was a small box and a pot seemingly used to cook herbs. As for what was inside the box, Xianxia didn't know and didn't have any desire to open it. She didn't like to invade other people's privacy. As for that peculiar pot, she didn't have the urge to look at it either. She suddenly felt that Emo was different from what Li Mume said about him, but at the same time similar to her description. This gave her an odd, uncanny feeling. She didn't know how Emo knew Su Jingwen, but she seemed to have a good impression of him. Ning Qingxue thought about when she first saw Emo dancing so flawlessly in synchronization with Su Jingguan, and when he gave a present to Su Jingguan. To her own surprise, she had felt uncomfortable, even perhaps a little jealous, watching the event unfold. She couldn't help but laugh at herself. Now, she saw with her own eyes that Emo lived with the girl next door, and oddly she felt very calm. Thinking about how Emo took her $500,000 card without hesitation made her feel that Emo fit Li Mumei's description perfectly. And just like that, her last remaining guilt towards Emo was gone. Now, she could only wait until Emo returned and get a marriage certificate with him. Then she would get Li Mumei to copy the certificate and release her private photos with Emo to the public. If after all that, she still couldn't get rid of the Song family's pestering, she wouldn't know what to do anymore. When Emo returned to the yard, Su Wei and Ning Qingxue had gone to sleep already. Seeing that both lights were turned off, he didn't go in but instead returned to the spot with the tree in the back of the yard and cultivated under it. Ning Qingxue heard the sound of the door and knew Emo came back. She wondered if he came back so late each night and, after a while, she heard the sound of Su Wei's door. Time flew by quickly during cultivation. Emo got up in the morning and finished a set of martial arts before washing himself. Then Su Wei got up and greeted Emo. However, while she had a strange look on her face, she concealed it very soon. She hurriedly got ready to work and left. Ning Qingxue, who was also wide awake, heard the sound of Emo and Su Wei in the yard, but resisted the urge to come out, and walked out once Su Wei had left. Ning Qingxue saw Emo caring for those flowers and confirmed her suspicions that they were really planted by him. A grown man actually liked to tend to these sort of things? She wondered if he was genuinely caring for the flowers or if it was his sexual orientations that were different than anticipated. "Oh, you're awake." Emo turned his head and saw Ning Qingxue, but didn't add anything after that one sentence. After a long, awkward pause, he continued, "Why do you look so bad? Did you not eat yesterday?" Emo saw the atmosphere was quiet between the two and thus took the initiative to start a conversation. However, he didn't think that Ning Qingxue shook her head and said, "I was not hungry, so I didn't eat yesterday." When Emo heard that she didn't eat yesterday, he became speechless. If he didn't eat anything for a whole day, that would be okay for him as the qi would help him. But it wouldn't be the same for Ning Qingxue. She wasn't a cultivator. It wasn't surprising that her complexion was so bad. "Go wash first, we'll go eat later." Emo only said a few words, and went back to taking care of his precious silver heart grass. That was his priceless asset after all. After Ning Qingxue was ready, Emo took her to the nearby road restaurant and got a few bowl of rice congee and some buns. Seeing the appetite of Emo, who ate 2 bowls of congee and 5 buns, Ning Qingxue was full after barely eating half a bun and half a bowl of congee, despite not eating anything yesterday. "Why do you have to get married to him?" Emo couldn't finish his words before being interrupted by Ning Qingxue again. "You don't need to ask that much. You just need to know that this is a deal between us. That's all." Ever since Emo took that card from her without hesitation, and she learned that he was living with Su Wei, Ning Qingxue felt her mood become worse. She doubted that the indifferent Emo she saw during Su Jingwen's birthday party was a fake. If Emo asked this question when they first saw each other, she would perhaps tell Emo that she just wanted to rid herself of the Song family. But now, she didn't want to say anything to Emo. She would pay the money and Emo would play his part. This was just a simple deal. After the deal, they would part ways, and the two wouldn't have nothing to do with each other anymore. As if noticing Ning Qingxue's change in tone, Emo smiled faintly and let the subject go. He wasn't about to get emotionally attached to the woman. Even if it was a marriage, it didn't affect him at all. Getting a marriage certificate was an easy thing as they only needed their identity paper and a picture together. Emo sighed about how complicated getting married was in his past life, but now, he didn't think things would be so simple. However, he also noticed that divorce seemed to be even easier. So simple that the person didn't even need to come to divorce. Emo didn't have the time to sigh. As soon as they collected their marriage certificate, Li Mumei came over and was going to help Emo and Ning Qingxue take a few private photos. "Why are you wearing pajamas?" Yemo asked weirdly and wondered if they were getting some kinky photo shoot. As if understanding what Yemo thought, Li Mumei said, "If Qingxue is not scared, what are you scared of? Do you believe that you are the main character of the photo shoots?" Mumei. Although Ning Qingshue's views of Yemo weren't excellent, Li Mumei's curt words made her feel quite awkward. After all, these photo shoots did make Ning Qingxue feel somewhat repulsed. Yemo wanted to reject, but when he saw Ning Qingxue, her morose eyes once again reminded him of Luo Ying. So in the end, he still agreed. Perhaps in the depths of his heart, he subconsciously saw Ning Qingxue as his master Luo Ying or used her as a way to think about Luo Ying. And plus, if Ning Qingxue wasn't scared, what should he be scared of? These sort of things shouldn't matter to him. He had nothing to lose even if he helped. He put on his pajamas and leaned on the head of the bed together with Ning Qingxue. Yemo had a strange feeling. Ning Qingshue's faint virgin smell enchanted him. He subconsciously moved closer to Ning Qingxue and didn't seem to realize that this was only an act. Ning Qingxue also wore pajamas and lay beside Yemo. Her eyes frowned as if she was repulsed, but her manner returned to normal quickly. Yemo's body didn't have a smell that she disliked. Instead, it was really fresh. That faint manliness with an almost infant-like smell made Ning Qingxue a bit confused. She seemed to notice Yemo move over closer to her, but unconsciously, she actually didn't move away. Instead, she leaned together with Yemo, closing her eyes. Ning Qingshue's body was very soft and made Yemo feel very comfortable. But not long after he squeezed together with Ning Qingxue, he realized this was a performance, and there was still a Li Mumei on the side. It wasn't time for him to be aroused. Thinking about this, Yemo was alerted in his heart and wanted to move aside. However, Li Mumei said in surprise, "You too. Don't tell me you're actually into the act. Hey, I've taken the pictures already. You can come down." Really? Ning Qingxue was suddenly shocked awake and immediately blushed. She really didn't know how she got into it and didn't dare to look at Yemo and Li Mumei. Instead, she nervously grabbed her coat and pulled it over her body. Yemo laughed and touched his nose as he put on his clothes as though no one was around. Then he left the room. Mumei, Ning Qingxue didn't seem to know how to explain her actions just then. She didn't know why she would be attracted by Yemo and didn't push him away. "It's okay. I've got the pictures ready. I'll send them to Jingguan later and bring a copy back to Beijing. From now on, you should just live here by yourself for now, for a month or so. Then things would be clear and concrete. I'll come over and visit you frequently." Li Mumei then sighed and continued. "Luckily Yemo has a particular condition. Otherwise, I think it would be really dangerous for you two to be together." Of course, Ning Qingxue knew what Li Mumei meant, but she didn't know how to argue against that. She even suspected that Yemo was a normal man. Otherwise, how could he sleep with Su Wei? Although she thought that, she was too embarrassed to say it out loud. However, she knew her feelings towards Yemo regardless of whether Yemo was impotent. Mumei thought too much. That was just an accident. At that moment, there was only peace in her heart, and nothing else. The next day, the greatest news wasn't the news of Yemo and Ning Qingshue's marriage. Instead, it was the discovery of two homosexuals on the Genesis Square, a couple who drove a BMW. But when the police intervened, they realized one of them was the vice mayor's son, and both of them were heavily injured. Obviously, someone was behind all this. Although Zhang Wanqiao and the other man were saved in time, they had become mentally disabled. Now, this matter was an unsolved case. After Li Mumei had left, Yemo's life returned to what it was before. He found out that as long as he didn't bring home food, Ning Qingsue basically wouldn't eat. He didn't know that when Ning Qingsue came out, she only brought a card and she gave that card to him. Now, she didn't have any money on her. After what happened last time, she was too embarrassed to call Li Mumei. Plus, Yemo took $500,000 from her. It wasn't much even if she ate with Yemo's money. If it was just Yemo alone, he didn't really care what he ate and didn't even mind if he didn't. However, Ning Qingsue was here, so he had to bring food for Ning Qingsue each day. However, after a few days, he discovered that Ning Qingsue ate very little of the food he brought home. He sighed. He knew that Ning Qingxue probably had some diet habits and wasn't used to eating takeaway food. Therefore, Yemo could only buy vegetables and cook the food himself. However, he only had 50,000 on him, and after buying herbs and some other daily items, he only had 20,000 remaining. Meanwhile, he looked at Ning Qingshue's card. He thought that she lived at his place and ate with his money, so it wouldn't matter if he used her card for some money. He wasn't looking to keep the remaining money by the end of the deal anyway, so he only needed it for necessities. However, what made Yemo disappointed was that he could not withdraw 5 cents, much less $500,000 from Ning Qingshue's card. There was no other reason but that the card was frozen. Although a lot of things didn't go successfully, there was something good, and that was that Ning Qingxue didn't dislike Yemo's cooking. She actually ate quite a lot each time, which made Yemo rest easier. Otherwise, if Ning Qingxue became fragile, as if a slight gust could topple her, that woman Li Mumei would probably become furious. Even though it didn't matter if she was furious, he was just scared that she would go to Ning High University and go on a rampage. Plus, he didn't have a bad impression towards Ning Qingxue and even felt that she was decent, so he didn't want to see her starve either. Ning Qingxue was very strange. Although Yemo bought little amounts of vegetables home, when Yemo started cooking, she actually ate more. Perhaps because Yemo's cooking was suitable to her tastes. Only a week later, she found out that she was a bit fatter than before. On the other hand, what made Yemo the happiest was that his silver heartgrass was finally mature and the seeds were ready to harvest. Yemo carefully took the 39 silver heartgrass seeds and put them in a jade bottle he prepared beforehand. He didn't want to plant them in this yard anymore because he wasn't going to live here for 2 years. After things had been settled here, he was going to leave Ninghai immediately, as he had the feeling that Ninghai was no longer suitable for him to stay. After taking the 39 seeds, Yemo started to prepare this silver heartgrass. It was a silver heartgrass in perfect conditions, and utilizing it the best way possible was the key. He might even reach the second stage of qi gathering thanks to it. With the remaining $20,000, Yemo spent more than 10,000 buying the best medical materials he could find to make a bowl of soup with the silver heartgrass. Ning Qingxue asked Yemo to bring her a few books from the library each time he went out. She rarely left his house and usually stayed in the yard reading books. When Yemo tended to his flowers, she also watched silently, and when Yemo made a herbal soup, she also watched without making a sound and never asking anything. Su Wei usually came back at night and left very early for work. Other than exchanging a few sentences with Yemo, she rarely encountered Ning Qingxue. This made her remember the time when Yemo first came. Yemo was like that as well and barely saw her. Yemo prepared the entire bucket of herbs to fit into a bowl of soup and was prepared to drink it that night when he cultivated. Yemo, I want to ask for your help. Other than borrowing some books, Ning Qingxue seldom spoke with Yemo, and actually, this was the first time she took the initiative to talk to Yemo. What is it? Say it. I'm in a good mood today. Yemo had collected the seeds and turned the silver heartgrass into a bowl of soup. He was indeed in a good mood today. Could you lend me $2,000? Ning Qingxue said calmly. To her, she thought Yemo wouldn't reject lending $2,000 to her because all of Yemo's money was hers before. I don't have the money. Yemo's good mood was slightly soured after Ning Qingxue's request. He only had $3,000 in his pocket right now, and Ning Qingxue just wanted to borrow $2,000 all of a sudden. You? Ning Qingxue was quite angry as she thought that he was so stingy. He took $500,000 from her and yet didn't even want to lend her $2,000. How could a person be like this? If you just remove the interest from the $500,000 I gave you, it would be enough for $2,000. You are a man and have many things to do in the future. How can you be like this? Ning Qingxue didn't think she would actually say what she thought in her heart, and it seemed to be very reasonable. When Yemo saw Ning Qingxue was starting to plead for herself, he hurriedly held his hands up and said, "Stop, stop, stop." After, he took out a roll of notes and gave Ning Qingxue $2,000 as he said, "This is the only time. Next time, don't ask me for money because my money is hard-earned." Ning Qingxue was contemptuous but eventually didn't rebuke Yemo. She thought that if his money didn't come easy, then no one's money came easy. He only needed to lend her a place to live, and he made $500,000. The reason Ning Qingxue wanted to borrow $2,000 was because she didn't have any money on her and was out of phone credit. Plus, she had to buy some feminine products. This made her very uncomfortable. That night, Emo waited until Su Wei and Ning Qingxue went to sleep before walking to the tree in the backyard. He finished the soup in one gulp and started to cultivate. When the potent medicine blasted into Yemo's chest, he controlled the direction of his qi to rapidly change the tenacity and width of his meridians. Yemo was overwhelmed with joy as he didn't think that one silver heart grass had such potent medicinal power. It looked like there was hope for him in reaching the second stage of qi gathering. After 4 hours, the cultivation essence in Yemo's body started increasing rapidly. However, he soon felt that something wasn't right. When the cultivation essence in his body increased to a certain degree, it stopped and instead started to burn his meridians. Yemo was shocked. If this were to continue, he would truly become useless. He was wondering what was going on when the burning sensation and the bursting feeling in his meridians grew more intense and, in the spur of the moment, he could only bit his wrist. Spew! The heat that had nowhere to go rushed to his wrist as hot blood spewed out from it. For now, Yemo was relieved. Luckily, he thought of this idea abruptly. Otherwise, he would have been doomed. It seemed that he shouldn't have drunk all of it in one gulp. This medicinal soup that he made didn't have a few spirit grass from the original recipe. He had to use normal herbs to replace them, and therefore, there were side effects. After the burning sensation was appeased, Yemo immediately cultivated to heal the wound. Although he suddenly lost blood, Yemo had reached the tertiary stage of the first stage of qi gathering. There was such a breakthrough the first time he cultivated, and Yemo felt that the medicinal powers hadn't been exhausted. Perhaps if he kept cultivating, he would even reach stage 2. However, on the second day, just when Yemo finished his breakfast and was ready to go to school, he found that the scorching feeling in his body was present once again. He felt bad. Would he have to release all of his blood again? It made his heart ache to see all of this blood being released. But this couldn't overwhelm Yemo. He just went straight to the hospital to sell his blood. He didn't know how much of his blood was taken away until finally, the qi in his body calmed down. He gasped a sigh of relief. When he arrived at the school, he didn't go to the library and instead went to find a place to cultivate. These few days were crucial. He had to completely digest the medical liquid in order not to waste it. The next few days, Ning Qingxue had been in contact with Li Mumei every day. She didn't dare to think about the Ning family that was in pandemonium. Although there was also the news of her marriage with Yemo in Ninghai, it was far less heated compared to in Beijing. The only thing that comforted Ning Qingxue was that ever since her news appeared on websites and newspapers, the Song family seemed to have given up and didn't bring up her matter with Song Shaoan again. In these few days, Yemo lived a life filled with joy and pain. His cultivation was improving every day, but he had to go donate blood to the hospital each day. Although the money he earned from blood donations wasn't much, it was still a source of income. The 6th night after he drank the soup, Yemo was cultivating when he suddenly heard a few cracks in his body. It was as though something was blasted open. His body started to feel free and comfortable. The remaining medicinal powers in his body had been all used up. His cultivation essence increased by many folds and his spirit sense was able to reach out. He was finally at the second stage of qi gathering now. That really wasn't easy. He didn't need to go to the hospital and suffer again. At this moment, Yemo almost wanted to get up and yell, but he knew it was midnight. If he were to scream at that moment, people would think that he was a madman. But he really couldn't express the joy in his heart. The next day, Yemo bought some breakfast for Ning Qingxue and got ready to leave for school. He wanted to leave a few medical pills for Xianxia. Since he was stage 2, it meant that he was going to leave soon. Xianxia was his friend, so before he left Ninghai, he was going to make a few medicinal pills in case of emergency. Originally, Yemo thought that after he had married Ning Qingxue and had released some of their photos taken together, there would be trouble for him. Yet surprisingly, after almost half a month, he didn't encounter any trouble. This made him gradually relaxed. Yemo. Ning Qingxue stopped him the moment Yemo was about to exit the door. As soon as Emo heard this, he knew it wasn't going to be good. Last time she stopped him, he lost $2,000. What would it be this time? However, Ning Qingxue had called to him, and he couldn't just pretend he didn't hear it. He turned his head towards Ning Qingxue. She was still as beautiful as a goddess. The only difference was her physique a bit more plump. It seemed that his cooking during these periods of time was responsible for it. If a stranger were here, he would have thought that she came for a holiday, and not seeking asylum. What? Emo was forlorn. Seeing Yemo's helpless face, Ning Qingxue didn't feel happy. Am I not a match for you? Even if it was a fake wedding, I could still be a match for someone like you, she thought sadly. But luckily, her personality was indifferent. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to stay all by herself at Yemo's place for half a month. I have a classmate coming, and she is a journalist. You should know the purpose. Although I really don't want to go eat with her, I'm still under the scrutiny of other people. Could you come to eat with my classmate and I tonight? Ning Qingshue's face returned to her previous calm. I know how to cook, so why going out to eat? Yemo's first thought was that cooking at home would save money. You? Ning Qingxue shook her head in disbelief. It wasn't that she needed her face. She just wanted to make sure their couple life was more realistic in other people's eyes. Okay, I'll come tonight, Yemo said weakly and turned to leave. Yunbing hadn't been to school during this period of time. She only remembered that night. After leaving the school, she wanted to buy something from the supermarket. However, on the way, she met a former classmate who appeared to have bought 2 bottles of drink and gave her one. Although she didn't want to associate much with him, he was too enthusiastic for her to reject and even helped her open the bottle. Then, she drank a few mouthfuls from the bottle and said a few words before leaving. But then her head grew dizzy. Yunbing wasn't usually that naive since she had already been independent in society for many years. But this situation still occurred. She immediately knew there was a problem with the drink her schoolmate gave her. Yunbing wanted to scream but found out that she was getting dizzier and couldn't even yell. She didn't know what happened later on. Why did she wake up to see Yemo? Was Yemo conspiring with the schoolmate against her? Yunbing's first thought was to report to the police and get the police to apprehend Yemo. But later, she checked herself and discovered that she wasn't sexually exploited, neither was there anything missing in her home. The only noticeable thing was the broken door. Thinking about how Yemo was still so young, Yunbing sighed and let him go. However, she hated him in her heart. She just didn't know how Yemo knew that schoolmate of hers. However, when Yunbing checked more carefully, she found signs of fighting and even a camera that was smashed to pieces. Were they fighting over who went on her first? Thinking about this, Yunbing was angry and embarrassed at the same time. She had already decided to go to the school next day and ask Yemo exactly what happened. But the news she saw the second day made her decide not to ask Yemo. This was because the second day, she saw on the news that there were 2 men stripped nude and beaten into idiots who were left on the Genesis Square. Although it was pixelated, Yunbing still felt this thing was weird. Yunbing then searched the internet for news and immediately saw on some small websites that the 2 people who were stripped nude were actually Zhang Wenxiao and her former schoolmate that drugged her. Yunbing immediately thought of Yemo and even suspected that Yemo did this. No matter what, Yunbing felt satisfied that this former schoolmate of hers was beaten till he was dumb. She wasn't sure if Yemo did this, but even if he did, she wouldn't tell him off. However, Yemo wanted to take advantage of her, which made her hate him for it. As for why Yemo didn't do anything to her in the end, she knew clearly it was because he didn't have the ability to. But why would Yemo be in her room, and how was that schoolmate of hers beaten into an idiot? She couldn't think it through and therefore left the matter festering at the back of her mind. So that day, Yunbing applied for leave for half a month before returning to the school. However, she didn't think that the first person she saw back at school was Yemo. Yemo just finished cultivating and was ready to find Xianxia. That was when he saw Yunbing walking into the school. Seeing Yunbing, he couldn't help but recall that night when Yunbing was nude and remembered her massive perky chest. Seeing Yemo, Yunbing's anger immediately boiled up. And Yemo was staring at her with such eyes, making her angrier. Just thinking about how her naked body was seen by this guy made her really angry. Yemo, come over. Although Yun Bing's tone was calm, the anger under the calm tone was undeniable. Yemo didn't think that Yun Bing had discovered him that night and walked calmly in front of her as he said, "Teacher Yun, what's the matter?" Yun Bing didn't speak and just took him to a far-off place in the school. After walking for a while, Yemo felt something wasn't right. Could she have found out it was him that night? This wasn't possible. Yun Bing was always unconscious, and he kept his mask on. How could Yun Bing know it was him? Seeing that there was no one nearby, Yun Bing asked Yemo with a pale face, "Looks good, doesn't it?" "What looks good? The scene here is average." Yemo suddenly had a bad feeling and hurriedly changed the topic. Suddenly, Yun Bing raised her hand and tried to slap Yemo across the face without any warning. Even if Yemo weren't alert of Yun Bing, she wouldn't have been able to connect her slap. Yemo grabbed Yun Bing's wrist and said coldly, "Teacher Yun, if you don't have anything to say, I'm leaving. If you dare to try to hit me again, then don't blame me for not reacting then, and I will make Ninghai University Lake the place where you take a shower." After responding to her gesture, Yemo turned to leave. "Yemo, you shameless person." Seeing that Yemo turned to leave without hesitation, Yun Bing immediately swore. It was completely different to her normal cold attitude. However, Yemo didn't pay attention to her and was nowhere to be seen soon. Although Yun Bing was called Merciless Bing, she couldn't help but cry thinking about what Yemo did to her. After some while, she rubbed her sore red eyes and left. After Yun Bing had left, another girl popped out not far in the distance. She stared at Yun Bing's back in disbelief as she muttered to herself, "I didn't think that Yemo would even harass teachers. He really is filthy to the bones." Yemo was angry and didn't have the mood to go to the classroom to find Xianxia. Instead, he just left the school. He really shouldn't have taken the extra move to save her. He saved her, and yet she was still like this. "Yemo, you're back." Yemo opened the door to the yard, and Ning Qingxue walked over like a little bird as she grabbed his arm. Yemo raised his head to see that there was a tall and slim woman behind her. She was about the same age as Ning Qingxue and had long silky hair. Her eyes were very bright, which seemed to be able to talk as they scrutinized Yemo, and appeared mature and astute. "Yemo, let me introduce my friend. This is my schoolmate Zhou Lei, and she came to Ninghai just to see me." "Zhou Lei, this is my husband, Yemo," Ning Qingxue introduced hospitably. Only Ning Qingxue knew that if it weren't, because she wanted everyone to realize she was Yemo's wife as soon as possible, she wouldn't even want to be socializing with other people. Zhou Lei was a journalist, and obviously, Ning Qingxue knew of her intentions to come to see her. "Oh, hello, Miss Zhou." Yemo reached out his hand and shook it with Zhou Lei. "Hello, Mr. Yi, you may call me Zhou Lei, and I'll just call you Yemo as well." Zhou Lei's smile was very professional. Zhou Lei felt weird. She had heard of Yemo and also guessed like the people outside that this marriage was made to avoid the Song family. Furthermore, seeing their living place further consolidated her opinion. But now that she saw Yemo's calm manner, this was the first time she doubted her judgment. "Qingxue, since your friend came, you should have called me." "All right, Zhou Lei, you still haven't eaten, right? Let's go and fill our stomachs first." "Zhou Lei, I'm sorry, this place is a bit shabby. Qingxue had been suffering a little with me, but this is only temporary. I definitely won't let her suffer much longer." Yemo didn't have the time to waste with Ning Qingxue's schoolmate. He wasn't in a good mood. He just wanted to eat and shoo off this woman who was here to extract information. Ning Qingxue heard Yemo call her Qingxue so casually, while she was also holding Yemo's arm. At that moment, she even doubted if she had really become Yemo's wife. How did that feeling come so suddenly? She remembered that the day when she wore pajamas for Li Mumei's photo session, she seemed to be so immersed into the act. Thinking about that day, Ning Qingxue quickly pulled out her arm from Yemo's arm as her heart was still beating quickly. Each time she made physical contact with Yemo, she discovered that she was unable to retain that calm state and was even more astonished by the fact that she liked that soothing feeling. Yemo seemed to have something on him that she wanted to pursue. It was like an indescribable feeling of serenity and longing, but it was a bit ethereal at the same time. That attracted her like a moth to a flame. So the only thing she could do was to constantly remind herself what sort of a person Yimo was. Zhou Lei saw Yimo's comfort and Ning Qingshue's leaning on him, as well as her faint blushes on her face, which made her doubt herself even more. Is Ning Qingxue really in love with Yimo and the two married each other due to love and not something else? Let's go. Yimo saw Zhou Lei was still lost in thought and reminded her of the reality. He didn't have any good impressions towards this woman who liked to invade other people's privacy. The three were each thinking of different things as they left the yard. In a place not far from their residence was a relatively large restaurant called Glamorous Cuisine and was a star restaurant. Ning Qingxue didn't want to go too far, so she pointed at Glamorous Cuisine and said to Yimo, "Yimo, I think this Glamorous Cuisine looks pretty good. Let's go there." "No, the food there is too expensive." Before Yimo finished his words, Ning Qingxue was already outraged. "Yimo, why do you need so much money for? We would only spend at most $1,000 at this restaurant. You..." Ning Qingxue wasn't someone who liked showing off, but Yimo kept $500,000 and was being stingy with her schoolmate about going to a restaurant. Although she didn't really like the schoolmate either, it was still a schoolmate, and she was still a member of the Ning family. Yimo was bringing too much shame to her. Zhou Lei looked at Yimo in surprise. It was her first time seeing someone so stingy over a meal. And this was in front of his own wife and her schoolmate. However, Ning Qingshue's admiration of him didn't seem to be fake. Seeing that Ning Qingxue was still going to say something else, Yimo was angry, but he wasn't someone with a narrow heart. He knew that if he got angry now, the show between him and Ning Qingxue would have been for nothing. He was going to leave Ning Hai soon, so there was no point in disputing a woman. Thinking about this, he hurried to say, "Okay, have it your way. Let's go here to eat today." Although he said that, he was depressed in his heart. He only had $3,000 in his pockets, and this was money earned from him selling his blood. Although the blood would have been wasted even if he didn't donate them, he still didn't want to use the money he acquired from selling blood to invite a woman whom he didn't like to dinner. Yimo had made his decision. After a few days, he would leave Ning Hai immediately. As for Ning Qingshue's matter, he had already helped out enough. He needed to find a stable place to plant his silver heartgrass. He already deeply understood that someone without a background like him would be meat on the chopping board in society if he didn't have enough power. The dinner was relatively pleasant. Although Zhou Lei didn't get what she wanted, she could already tell that Yimo and Ning Qingshue's expenditure views were quite different. But from how Yimo was so stingy with money, she was further assured that Yimo was really living life with Ning Qingxue. From how Yimo used cash and not a card to pay for the meal, she could tell Yimo really wasn't living a wealthy life. Yimo was the most unhappy. This meal cost him $3,000. He even had to take out the 5s and 10s on him. If Ning Qingxue didn't have to order the $2,000 bottle of wine, this meal wouldn't cost that much. Although he drank most of the red wine, he was still unhappy. He knew Ning Qingxue did this on purpose. She gave him a credit card whose account was frozen, and yet she was still so cocky. Yimo almost threw the card at her to tell her to get the money herself. No wonder they say the people that are hated are also pitiful at the same time. Wasn't Ning Qingxue someone like that? After the meal, Zhou Lei didn't stay and instead chose to bid them farewell. Perhaps it was because she saw Yimo using 5s and 10s to pay, but she wondered if he were showing her that he had no money or something like that. When Ning Qingxue and Yimo went back, they weren't as intimate as before. Ning Qingxue didn't want to talk to Yimo. She felt that Yimo had made her lose face today. Although she didn't really care about these things, Yimo paid with cash instead of his card, and even though she did intentionally order the red wine, but in the end, he drank it all by himself. Yimo didn't want to talk either. This dinner cost him more than $3,000. Now, he only had $20 remaining in his pocket. In the following days, if Yimo didn't go out to find work, he wouldn't even have money for food. Perhaps he really had to sell blood to get food, but it was impossible for him to do that in the long term. His situation wasn't that bad. Although the price he was paid for selling blood was the same as everyone else, Yimo believed his blood had better quality than others. He felt he was losing out with this price. Yimo's dishes were getting simpler and simpler. Although Qingxue wasn't fussy about food, she looked down on stingy people like Yimo. That night, Yimo carried his medical kit out. He didn't think that he had to go out to the night market ahead of schedule since Ning Qingxue came. Originally, he thought that he didn't need to do this anymore after curing the purple coral poison of the old man. But now he walked on this path once again. However, what made Yimo disappointed was that, even if he had his stall set up in the busy streets of Ningdu Walking Street for 2 days, he didn't get even one person to do business with. Instead, he was even kicked by the city management once. Yimo barely went to Ning High University. Firstly, he didn't want to see Yun Bing. Secondly, there was nothing he could learn there anymore. He originally planned to give a few medicinal pills he made to Xianxia, but he had applied to leave for a week due to family issues. Although Ning Qingxue basically hadn't been talking to Yimo, she still saw what Yimo was doing. Her father had called her and told her not to worry. Even if he, Ning Zhongfei, were kicked out of the Ning family, he would not sell his daughter, especially to that demon from the Song family. Her father's words made Ning Qingxue feel more assured. Her parents already went to Beijing to settle things with the Ning family. 2 days after that, they would come to Ning Hai and take her away. Ning Qingxue saw the pot Yimo left in the corridor to boil herbs, and her contempt towards Yimo gradually started to fade. What was the relationship between him and her? This was just a deal. She gave him $500,000 and that money was his. If he didn't want to spend money, that was his problem. Why should she be disappointed in this type of person? After thinking through this, Ning Qingxue seemed to feel better. Although he was very stingy, he still bought some vegetables home and cooked every day. Yimo carried his little case out again. Su Wei still didn't come back. She didn't know whether or not if it was because Yimo and Su Wei were living together that Ning Qingxue tried to avoid facing Su Wei. As for what was her mentality, she didn't know. Perhaps it was to avoid awkwardness. Regardless of whether it was real or fake, she and Yimo were still husband and wife. The husband slept in the room of the woman next door. Even if they were fake couples, she didn't want to face that woman. Thinking about how she would leave here the day after tomorrow and probably never come back for her life. There was an unknown yet faint melancholy that rose in her heart. She knew this wasn't because of Yimo but because of other reasons. Ning Qingxue walked out of her room for the first time. Perhaps she also wanted to see the place where she had lived for more than 20 days looked like. Mingdu Street was probably the most popular place at Ningdu District at night, and Ning Qingxue had unknowingly walked here already. The place was filled with people, red lights and green lights. There were all sorts of snacks and small tokens sold everywhere. There were also many small businesses and stalls. One stall had golden cakes that looked enticing and was steaming with air. Ning Qingxue, who never ate roadside stall snacks, couldn't resist the temptation and bought one golden cake with $2. She bit down lightly. It was sticky and soft. Come and have a look at a recipe passed down from the ancestor. It can cure all sorts of diseases, headaches, fever, external and internal injuries, short-sightedness. There are only things you can't think of but nothing I can't cure. This promoting almost made Ning Qingxue laugh. From the sounds of this person, he could cure anything. Ning Qingxue subconsciously looked up at the person selling the fake medicine and was stunned. Wasn't this Yimo? Although he wore shades and a duck-shaped hat, Ning Qingxue could tell it was him from the first glance. Plus, there was that signature chest beside him. Ning Qingxue always didn't know what was inside it, but now she did. It was a medical case. Ning Qingxue sighed. Although $500,000 wasn't much for her, it should be quite a lot for Yimo. Yet he still wasn't satisfied as he had to come out to cheat people and actually proclaimed that he could cure any disease. If he were so powerful, the world wouldn't need hospitals anymore. City management is here, someone called out. Many stall owners immediately started packing up their things and left. Ning Qingxue stared at Yimo, and as expected, Yimo packed up his things helplessly. However, he didn't run away hastily like the other stall owners. Instead, he packed up his things slowly and left. Although she didn't get to see Yimo scrambling away, she still got to see Yimo leave dejectedly. And this gave Ning Qingxue a sense of satisfaction. This is what you get for cheating people, she thought to herself. When Ning Qingxue returned to the yard, Yemo had already come back. He looked once at Ning Qingxue and didn't say anything. Ning Qingxue would of course not bother to talk to him either. She was wondering whether she should tell Su Wei what sort of person he was before she left. His business didn't succeed, and he was kicked away by city management. Yemo was already sick of the days in Ninghai and wanted to leave. As for Ning Qingshue's business, he had already helped her enough. He would say goodbye to her tomorrow and leave. He didn't need to go to Ninghai University, but he still had to leave a letter behind for Xianxia. When Su Wei had already gone to sleep, Yemo started to cultivate. Young Master 1, there is half an hour remaining before we arrive at Ninghai. Where shall we go first? A BMW was heading towards Ningfeng Highway at high speed, while the driver was asking a youth that was younger than 30 in the back seat. The youth had a pale face and a pair of eagle eyes. His face was rather long and his hair perfectly combed. Hearing the driver's words, the youth just took out a cigarette while the big man sitting beside him quickly took out a lighter and lit up the cigarette for him. RFA, did you finish the task I gave you? The youth sucked on the cigarette and asked. Yes, young Master 1. I left no traces, the bulky man replied. The youth inhaled the cigarette once again and stayed silent for some time before continuing. We came from Yifeng just so that Grandpa and the people of the Ning family wouldn't be suspicious. If we go according to our original plan and stay one night in Ninghai, something might happen, so we might as well just abduct that woman. This saves me from always thinking about her. I will let this bitch know what regret truly is. Saying this, the initially calm youth was angered such that veins began to emerge from his clenched fist. He raised his hand and threw away the barely used cigarette. The robust man called Fa quickly picked it up and threw it out the window. That useless man is called Yemo, right? The youth gradually calmed down. Ever since the beginning, no one dared to reject him, Song Shaowen. He didn't think a mere Ning Qingxue would dare to reject him, and not just that, but she actually got married to another man, and they were even living together. This was slapping him across his face and his pride. If Song Shaowen could endure something like that, he wouldn't be Song Shaowen. If it wasn't for his grandfather who stopped him, he would have come to Ninghai ages ago. This time, he changed routes at Yifeng before coming back to Ninghai. Yes, young Master 1, the useless man is called Yemo. The two did, in fact, sleep together. I saw some pictures on some websites, and they seem to love each other a lot, the driver hurriedly said. Song Shaowen, who had already calmed down, immediately grew pale with rage again. He said coldly, I will make this Yemo watch me and endure the torture when I show him how I sleep with that bitch. Then, Yemo, right? We'll take him away. Isn't there a valley at Yanning Highway? We'll break his limbs and drop him from there. He's too weak to fight over my women. It was already 1 a.m., and Yemo finished one big cycle and 12 small cycles of cultivation. He wasn't going to cultivate anymore. He was leaving tomorrow and wanted to find a place to sleep. The stone block next to the flower pots was where he usually slept after cultivation. Just when Yemo laid down, a metal hook landed onto the wall as three figures quickly climbed over and jumped into the backyard. Although Song Shaowen had a pale face, his wall-flipping movements were agile. This is where that useless trash Yemo lives, right? Which room is he sleeping in with Ning Qingxue, that bitch? The pale-faced Song Shaowen asked as soon as he dropped to the ground. This is where Yemo lives indeed, but he isn't a useless trash. A sudden voice was heard. Song Shaowen wasn't able to react to the first half, but he immediately turned his body to face Yemo for the second half of the sentence. After some time, he was full of shock and asked, Who are you? At the same time, the people behind Song Shaowen also saw Yemo. They all looked at him in shock and were tense and alert. I am Yemo. Do you want me or my wife? Yemo said calmly. You are Yemo? Wang Chuan, Afa, break his legs. I want to see how this useless trash is so different that he could make that bitch willing to sleep with Hai. Before Song Shaowen finished his sentence, he discovered that his wrist was held tightly by an iron-like palm. If you want to fight, that's fine, but I will crush your wrist first. Try me if you don't believe me. Yemo didn't want to fight here in case he alerted Su Wei. He knew that these people probably came for Ning Qingxue, but Su Wei was innocent. Looking at Song Shaowen, Wang Chuan and Afa immediately knew that their young master was in Yimo's hands, so they all stopped their movements. "Tell me, what's your name, trash?" Yimo used a little strength on his hands, and Song Shaowen almost screamed out. Sweat quickly emerged on his forehead. "I am Song Shaowen, from the Song family of Beijing. I didn't come here for you. I came here for Ning Qingxue. Release me immediately or your Yi family, or you, Yimo, will die nameless and shameful." Song Shaowen originally wanted to say that he was going to do something to the Yi family, but he realized that the Yi family was also a member of the 5 great families of Beijing, just like his own. They weren't afraid of the Song family, so he changed his words to Yimo. "Oh, so that's it. However, your family is just a pile of trash in my eyes, so I'm not concerned at all. Ning Qingxue is my wife, and you dare to come find her? Are you deaf or are you blind?" Now, Yimo used some more strength on his hands, and Song Shaowen finally had to cry out in pain. "Yimo, we can talk. There's no need to fight," Wang Chuan said, seeing the situation was going in the wrong way. "You drove here, right?" Yimo suddenly asked something completely irrelevant. "Yes," Wang Chuan replied helplessly, as he didn't understand why Yimo would suddenly ask something irrelevant. Yimo nodded. "In that case, we will discuss outside." Yimo wanted to leave, and since these few people drove here, it would be the perfect opportunity to take him along. It would save him the cost of traveling. Seeing Yimo take the initiative to go outside, Song Shaowen's 2 henchmen were obviously willing to. They initially thought that they couldn't fail this plan, but they would have never expected Yimo to be this strong. This was completely out of their expectations, and now the matter had gone out of their control. What took Song Shaowen and the other 2 by surprise was that Yimo actually released Song Shaowen's wrist and just stared at the trio. Song Shaowen and his 2 henchmen looked at each other and nodded, thinking that Yimo really was a useless trash. His brain didn't seem to be functioning properly. The guy called Afa first went over the wall and leaped out. Then Yimo also jumped over, with Song Shaowen and Wang Chuan closely following behind them. Song Shaowen was prepared to tell the other 2 to attack as soon as he reached the other side of the wall. However, he didn't even have the chance to land that the scene in front of them made them drop their jaws in shock. It was because they saw a fallen Afa sprawled on the ground, with Yimo stepping victoriously on his chest while staring coldly at him and Wang Chuan. He couldn't understand how Yimo subjugated Afa in a matter of milliseconds. Afa was his best henchman. However, Song Shaowen couldn't think anymore, because before he even landed on the ground, Yimo flew over and kicked him. Crack! Song Shaowen's leg bones were broken by Yimo's kick. Arg! Song Shaowen immediately broke out in cold sweat. Wang Chuan shivered as he stared at Yimo's flying kick. What sort of person is he? His moves are so horrific. He is definitely a tough brick. Get into the car! Yimo's murderous eyes made Wang Chuan shiver. He didn't dare to resist and quickly climbed in. What made him grow numb with fear was that Yimo was able to carry Song Shaowen and Afa, one in each hand, with him effortlessly, and followed behind him. Song Shaowen was in so much pain that he almost fainted. If he had another chance, he would rather be sworn at than come face to face with this demon called Yimo. Everyone else was used to call Shaowen a demon, but Song Shaowen himself had just realized that the true demon was Yimo, who pretended to be weak. When he tortured people, at least he had thoughts in his mind and expressions on his face. But when Yimo broke his leg, it was as though it was something as simple as stepping on an ant. His eyes didn't even blink, much less betray any expression. The car wasn't far away, only a few hundred meters away. Song Shaowen was used to choose small roads to park on so that he wouldn't be seen by others. Besides, it was 2 a.m. There was no one on the streets, so these few people went into the BMW unimpeded. Yimo dumped Song Shaowen and Afa on the back seat and took all their cash. Then, he sat in the seat beside the driver, saying, "Drive to Guilin." Guilin was the intersection between China and a few other small countries. This place was in the mountains and didn't have many people. This was perfect for Yimo's cultivation. Plus, even if people found out he killed Song Shaowen, it was extremely hard to try to capture him there. What, Guilin? Wang Chuan was shocked. Guilin was almost 1,000 km from Ninghai. How could they drive over there? No bullshit, just drive. Emo ordered, making Wang Chuan gulp down the words. He could only quickly start up the BMW and rapidly disappear from the range of Ninghai City. When the car drove for an hour or so, Emo suddenly remembered that his little medical case was still in the corridor of the room. However, if he went back to get it now, it would probably become dawn, so he abandoned the idea. There were only some soup, pills, a letter, and some miscellaneous things. Not only was Song Shaowen depressed, but Afa and Wang Chuan were also humbled and dejected. It was usually them who taught people lessons, but today, not only were they taught a lesson by the supposed useless trash Emo, but they had also been robbed of their money. Young Master Mo, it is my fault to have wronged you this time, but I think you know the power of the Song family. If something were to happen to me, you would never be able to escape. But if you are willing to let me go, I won't mistreat you any further. Song Shaowen started to soften and beg for mercy. He felt this Emo was a fierce character, far fiercer than him. But before he finished his words, slap slap, Emo slapped twice Song Shaowen hard before slowly saying, "Stop bullshitting in front of me. It would be to your benefit if your Song family didn't mess with me. If they did, I'd erase their name from Beijing. Emo, will do as I say, but perhaps you won't get the chance to see it." You? Song Shaowen spat out 2 teeth and was shaking. It was unknown if he was shaking out of anger or fear, but this time Song Shaowen was really scared. From Yemo's words, it seemed as though Yemo was going to take his life. Although he didn't believe Yemo would dare to, he only had one life after all. If regrets were of any use, he would have done it thousands of times already. After another hour or so, Yemo looked ahead at the highway wrapped precariously around the tall mountain and thought to himself, it's almost dawn. If he pushed the car off the cliff here, it would be the most suitable idea. He wasn't really going to get this car to drive him to Guilin. That would be asking to die. Thinking about this, Yemo saw a camera far away. He suddenly bowed down and pulled on the wheel. Wang Chuan, who was still thinking on how to alert the police, didn't expect Yemo to duck his body and turn his wheel so suddenly. The vehicle had a sudden big turn and charged off the highway, falling down the cliff. The moment the car started plummeting, Yemo kicked open the door and used his wind-controlling technique to glide to the wall of the cliff, sticking closely to it. He had to be in the 3rd stage of Qi gathering to be able to utilize the wind-controlling technique to its full potential, but Yemo was only in the 2nd stage now, so he had difficulty using it. However, it was enough for him to save his life. The BMW fell off the cliff, and after a short moment, a loud explosion sounded, and a swirl of fire erupted. Yemo was relieved. He was still thinking that if the car didn't burn, he would have to go down and do it himself. But he didn't think the car would so obediently burn by itself. Yemo carefully avoided the cameras and went into the forest, quickly disappearing into the night. Ning Qingxue got up in the morning. Su Wei had already gone to work, but what made her curious was that Yemo didn't buy breakfast for her that morning. She also didn't see Yemo, and this made her unhappy. Last time, she just brought a schoolmate for dinner, but in the end, not only was the food quality had decreased, but now she didn't even get breakfast. Even if she spent $2,000 for a bottle of red wine, the red wine was drunk all by him anyway. Luckily, she was leaving 1 day later. Otherwise, she had this indescribable repulsion each time she saw Yemo. Sometimes one couldn't just rely on their first impression. After all, other people's opinions weren't formed from thin air. However, what made Ning Qingxue disappointed was that she still didn't see Yemo at noon. Suddenly, she realized that she had become overly dependent on Yemo. If Yemo didn't come back, would she not eat? Since nobody from the Song family came to bother her, Ning Qingxue did feel a lot more relieved, and soon she was going to leave Beijing with her parents, which made her feel even better. After lunch, Ning Qingxue suddenly looked at Yemo's flower pots. It seemed that they hadn't been managed for more than 10 days. Some flowers had even died. However, Ning Qingxue discovered that the one especially taken care of by Yemo with a silver color had disappeared. Ning Qingxue suddenly felt annoyed and wanted to call Li Mumei, but her phone suddenly ringed. Qingxue, I have great news for you. Did you know? Last night around 4 a.m., Song Shaowen's car fell off a cliff at Fengjin Highway. Song Shaoan and his 2 henchmen who were in the car all died. Now you can relax. No one will come to bother you ever again. I'll come and pick you up tomorrow? Li Mumei's joyful voice made Ning Qingxue feel like she was dreaming. After a long time, she finally hung up the phone. She still couldn't believe that the demon in her dreams had died, and she was relieved. Ning Qingxue let out a long sigh of relief. Her first instinct was to go into the room and take out her marriage certificate with Yemo so when he came back she could divorce him. This afternoon must have been the longest afternoon for Ning Qingxue. Yemo, who usually came back early to cook, still didn't come back at 8 p.m. However, Su Wei came back from work. This was the first time Su Wei came back from work to see Ning Qingxue. Not in her room but waiting outside. However, she didn't see Yemo. You are Su Wei, right? Ning Qingxue said hesitantly. Su Wei nodded. Yeah. Did Yemo told you? Actually, I don't even know your name yet. I'm Ning Qingxue. I wanted to ask if you knew where Yemo went? Why has he still not come back today? In Ning Qingxue's eyes, Yemo and Su Wei were living together. Su Wei would definitely know where Yemo was. Yemo? I haven't seen him for 2 days. Isn't he with you? Su Wei said, intrigued. Meanwhile, she thought, your boyfriend disappeared. Why are you asking me? With me. Ning Qingxue was as intrigued as Su Wei. She noticed something different. Things didn't seem to be the way she thought them to be. Then, she looked at Su Wei's expression so she could only say, you are his girlfriend? Isn't he living with you? Hearing Ning Qingxue's words, Su Wei blushed and was a bit annoyed. But Ning Qingxue was so beautiful, and her temperament was obviously not that of a normal woman, so she couldn't really throw a fit. However, she replied coldly, since when was I his girlfriend? This is really weird. You are living with him in the same room every day, and you say I am his girlfriend. This is too out of this world. What? Emo doesn't stay with you at night? Ning Qingxue asked in surprise. As if discerning Ning Qingxue wasn't lying on purpose, Su Wei replied, I am only renting the same house with him. We don't know each other that well. Wasn't he living with you? Ning Qingxue already knew. She must have misunderstood Yemo. However, if Yemo wasn't living with him and didn't live with Su Wei, where would he be living? It should be the hotel. He had quite some money now. Oh, he should be living in the hotel. It's just that he ran off somewhere today. Ning Qingxue was a bit embarrassed thinking that she misunderstood Yemo. Live in the hotel? Not possible. I wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning, and each morning he would be in the backyard. Su Wei stopped her words at that moment. If she continued, it would be making it clear that Ning Qingxue was living with Yemo. And since she didn't want to admit it to herself, why bother saying it? Su Wei, who suddenly stopped talking, felt embarrassed and said, perhaps. He really is living in the hotel. I have some things to attend to, so I'm going in. Of course, Ning Qingxue knew what Su Wei was thinking and went hurriedly to Su Wei while she said awkwardly, sorry, Su Wei, I really didn't stay with him. But how could he be in the yard at 5 or 6 a.m. each morning? Su Wei found this series of events funny, but she saw that Ning Qingxue didn't seem like she was lying and frowned her eyes, thinking that this was too absurd. It made people have chill thinking about it. Is Yemo? She didn't dare to keep thinking about it. As if suddenly remembering something, Su Wei suddenly said, the landowner has installed a camera at the front and the back. The control center is a computer placed in the storage room. I'll show it to you. Ning Qingxue heard that there was a camera and hurriedly followed Su Wei into that storage room full of boxes, which was at the corner of the living room. Ning Qingxue had stayed here for so long and did not know that there was another storage room. There was a surveillance computer inside, but it was full of dust, and the power was switched off. The two switched on the screen and saw the 2 surveillance windows. One was facing the front door, and another was at the back. It seemed that the landowner was quite meticulous. They opened the recent surveillance recording. The camera facing the front door showed that Yemo went out early each morning, but it didn't show Yemo going out at night. However, when the 2 people switched the camera to the back, they immediately found out Yemo had been sitting under the tree for the whole night. Other than occasionally sleeping under the rainproof tent on the stone floor for a few hours, most of his time was spent laying on the tree. He had been sleeping on the tree? Ning Qingxue and Su Wei looked at each other in shock. Su Wei and Ning Qingxue both had the same thought. What happens during the rainy days? A week ago, there was a pouring rain. They hurried to change the date to that rainy day, but what shocked them was Emo was still sitting under the tree. However, the rain seemed to have formed a barrier around Emo. The two couldn't see that clearly and thought there was a problem with the camera. However, an hour later, Emo left the tree and slept on the stone floor. Su Wei was an emotional girl, and after seeing that Emo didn't even have a place to live at night, she immediately felt some disgust towards Ning Qingxue. Her tears fell, thinking that Emo was pitiful. Even if this girl was pretty, she couldn't just do that to Emo. What a fox demon. Wiping her tears, Su Wei glanced at Ning Qingxue. She didn't want to stay with this woman anymore. She just turned and left the storage room without saying anything. When Su Wei walked out of the storage room, Ning Qingxue understood that Su Wei had some enmity towards her. She could feel and see it plainly. However, now she was still staring at Emo, who slept on the stone floor. She suddenly felt some pain in her heart, but it wasn't sadness like Su Wei. He had that much money. Why didn't he go to the hotel? Why did he stay under the tree night after night? Even if he did sleep under the tree, he should come under the roof when it was raining. Plus, even if he wanted to live in the same room with me, I wouldn't have disagreed. I was the one coming to live in the same room as Emo. Thinking about how Su Wei was crying, Ning Qingxue felt her heart was a bit hard. She just felt Emo was too much of a cheapskate. Although she didn't feel good, she only thought of one sentence. Those who are hated have pitiful aspects. She didn't know Emo thought of her this way too. She sighed and thought, was he so stingy because he was too poor before? Although she felt touched by Emo moving out his room for her, she felt that it was more because she gave $500,000 to Emo. The camera was switched on the previous night, and Emo was still standing under the tree for half the night, and around 1 a.m., he had gone to sleep on the stone floor. But the following scene almost made Ning Qingxue scream. Song Shaoan sneakily jumped over the wall with 2 henchmen. Ning Qingxue suddenly remembered Li Mumei's phone call. Didn't Song Shaoan die already? Why was he here last night? Thinking about this, Ning Qingxue felt goosebumps on her head. But the following scenes made her completely understand the situation. Emo, who was sleeping on the stone floor, just spoke a few words with Song Shaoan and them. Then Song Shao and his 2 henchmen took Emo away. The scenes afterward returned to nothing. She couldn't hear the conversation between Emo and Song Shaoan. Ning Qingxue had already understood. It seemed like Emo and Song Shaoan reached some sort of agreement and just left like that. Normally, if Song Shaoan came here, how could he leave without abducting her? What happened? Song Shaoan actually found his way here. This really was insane. Ning Qingxue felt scared just thinking about it. If it wasn't for Emo, what would have happened? She didn't dare to think. Song Shaoan's car fell off the cliff. Did anything happen to Emo? Ning Qingxue could no longer hold her worry in, as she picked up the phone to call Li Mumei. Mumei, you said Song Shaoan and 2 of his men died. Was there anyone else in the car? This was what Ning Qingxue wanted to know the most. Although Emo took $500,000 from her, Ning Qingxue couldn't accept it if Emo lost his life because of the money. Plus, these men came for her. Emo was innocent. No, what's wrong? There were only the 3 of them in the car. This was verified. The Song family is in turmoil right now. Qingxue, don't think too much. I'll come stay with you tomorrow. Li Mumei comforted her. After hanging up, Ning Qingxue still didn't feel appeased. There was no way she could let anyone see the video recording here. Thinking about this, Ning Qingxue hurried and took her USB and copied the clips, while deleting it from the computer. Only then did she feel a little better. However, another thought hit her. What if the Song family knew that Song Shaoan came to Ninghai? If they were to investigate, this clip could still be recovered. Ning Qingxue was stuck, not knowing what to do. She was already certain that Song Shaoan's death should be related to Emo. However, Song Shaoan's car fell into the cliff at Fengjin Highway. The Song family shouldn't be able to find out about this place. When Ning Qingxue left the storage room and didn't see Su Wei, she knew that Su Wei had a bad opinion of her and had left in a huff. Am I really a bad woman, though? Ning Qingxue asked herself but couldn't find the answer. 'Twas a sleepless night, and when she got up the next morning, Su Wei had already gone to work. Qingxue quickly packed her belongings before staring at the pot at the corner of the room, losing herself in thought. Emo often used that pot to cook some herbs. Was he really using those stuff to cheat people at Buxing Street? She then set her eyes on a black bag. She knew that bag had Yemo's little chest inside. It was all the stuff he used to sell fake medicine. Just when Ning Qingxue held up the bag, the front doorbell had sounded. She opened the door and saw that it was Li Mumei that had come. Li Mumei scanned the house and didn't find Yemo, so she asked curiously, "Where's Yemo?" "He went out yesterday and hadn't been back since." Ning Qingxue answered subconsciously. "Oh, I brought a bank card over. Regardless of whether he wants it or not, we still need to give him some money, right? After all, we used him for so long. Anyway, your parents are picking you up at U State. They won't be coming to Ninghai, so we'll go to U State to meet up with them," Li Mumei said casually. Ning Qingxue shook her head and said, "Oh, no need to give him any money. I already gave a card with $500,000 to him. I think that should be enough as payment." "Where did you get 500,000? Li Mumei looked at Ning Qingxue in surprise and asked. "Of course, from when we left Beijing. It was the one you made for me last time," Ning Qingxue replied. That card is useless. They froze it the day we left Beijing. I only knew afterward and forgot to tell you." Li Mumei looked at Ning Qingxue helplessly. Ning Qingxue was dazed for a long while before mumbling, "Useless card? So all this time I have been using his money? No wonder he was stingy. So it was like that." "Qingxue, what are you talking about?" Li Mumei saw Ning Qingxue was lost in thought, and her voice wasn't very loud either. So she hurriedly asked, Ning Qingxue suddenly thought of something and immediately moved. She picked up Yemo's bag and took out the little medical case and opened it quickly. There were 7 or 8 bottles, a packet of silver needles, and an identity card. The card she gave him was also there. There were also a few charms that had weird drawings on it. Lastly, there was a letter that didn't have the receiver name on it. Ning Qingxue took the card as her hands started to shake. If there were a hole in the ground she could crawl into, she would do it without hesitation. She had always thought that Yemo was using her money, while she even asked $2,000 from him without any hesitance. She ate and lived here without any burden on her heart. Only today, she knew how ridiculous she was. She had always been using Yemo's money, but why didn't he say anything? No wonder he was hesitating on going to glamorous cuisine that day. When he was paying the bills, he even took out the 5s and 10s. What was more ridiculous was that she actually purposely ordered a $2,000 bottle of wine. There was also a stack of receipt at the bottom of the case. Ning Qingxue took out those folded receipts and just felt her head buzzing. Her face immediately became pale, and she almost fell to the ground. "Qingxue, what happened?" Li Mumei hurriedly held Ning Qingxue up. Ning Qingxue took that stack of receipt and stuffed it into the case hurriedly. Then, she turned and said to Li Mumei, "Mumei, could you wait for me outside?" Ning Qingxue ran into the room and shut the door. "Qingxue, what's wrong? You're crying." Li Mumei stood in front of the closed door and was also dumbfounded. She clearly saw Ning Qingxue's tears. In all her memory, Ning Qingxue had never cried, no matter how sad the matter was. She never cried, not once. However, today Ning Qingxue cried. What happened to her? What made her so sad? Ning Qingxue sat by the bedside and opened Yemo's case once again. Stacks of blood-selling receipts appeared in front of her. The most recent one was a few days before her schoolmate had come. Yemo was selling blood, but she asked for $2,000 and was forced to eat a $3,000 meal at glamorous cuisine. One meal there cost multiple times what he received from selling blood. Yet she was there laughing at him for becoming stingier and even complaining that the food he prepared was getting worse. Why did he never complain in front of her? Was it due to contempt or just simply not wanting to? What sort of man was this? What sort of man could do this? Was this really the good-for-nothing trash that was kicked out of the Yi family? If the broadest thing in this world was the ocean, then now, in Ning Qingshua's eyes, Yimo's heart was immeasurably broader than the ocean. But in his eyes now, what sort of a person was she? Heartless? Indifferent? Unreasonable? Ning Qingshua's tears fell rapidly on the blood-selling receipt as the words on it began to smudge. It was as though she was going to shed her 22 years of tears all at once here. However, she couldn't stop the regret, remorse, and sadness from charging and flowing out of her heart. Come and have a look at a recipe passed down from the ancestor. It can cure all sorts of diseases, headaches, fever, external and internal injuries, short-sightedness. There are only things you can't think of but nothing I can't cure. Yimo's promotion voice seemed to still be by her ear. However, he was nowhere to be seen. How ridiculous that at the time she still had a golden cake in her hands, hoping that the city management would kick him away. Ridiculous? His voice sounded ridiculous at the time, but now, she just felt terrible. Perhaps the golden cake in her hands at the time was bought by the money Yimo got from selling blood. However, she held the cake while hiding in the corner, laughing at his shamelessness and ignorance. Ignorant? When Yimo paid for the bills after that dinner, she was actually embarrassed for Yimo taking out 5s and 10s. Yet at this moment, Ning Qingxue suddenly hated herself so much. Bang bang. The door sounded with Li Mumei's banging. However, Ning Qingxue didn't hear anything. She only heard Yimo's words reverberating in her mind. No, the food there is too expensive. We would only spend at most $1,000 at this restaurant, was her reply at the time. Only $1,000. But how many times did Yimo had to go to the hospital for $1,000? He was only a student. Other than selling blood to the hospital, where else could he get money from? Ning Qingxue subconsciously took out the $2,000 Yimo gave her. There were only a few $100s left. Ning Qingxue, who had always thought money was dirty, for the first time caressed the money in her hands, feeling pain in her heart. He had been sleeping under the tree in the backyard and on the stone floor because he had no money to go outside and live. Why could Su Wei think of it as because Yimo was trying to save money but she couldn't? I'm so sorry, Yimo. Ning Qingxue rubbed her swollen red eyes and picked up that anonymous letter. She knew this letter wasn't for her. She wanted to open it but at the last moment held up that urge. She carefully packed up Yimo's things and put them in a case before opening the door. Qingxue, what happened to you? Li Mumei saw Ning Qingxue with swollen eyes and immediately knew in her heart that she was right. Ning Qingxue really was crying, and she seemed sorrowful as well. What's inside that case? Li Mumei looked with curiosity at the case Ning Qingxue was hugging. Ning Qingshue's change must have been due to this box. She really wanted to know what sort of box made Ning Qingxue, who had never cried, so pitiful. That's my stuff. Ning Qingxue shook her head and didn't give the chest to Li Mumei. Li Mumei shook her head and said, Qingxue, the things here have been settled. Let's go. Today we'll go and do the proceedings for the divorce, then we'll go straight to you state. I don't think your father and his big brother had a very nice negotiation. We don't need to go Beijing anymore. Ning family medical materials may be split in half now. Mumei, I want to wait another 2 days. Perhaps Yimo might come back. And, I don't want a divorce right now. Ning Qingxue shook her head and refused Li Mumei's suggestion. Why? Li Mumei looked at Ning Qingxue in surprise. She really couldn't understand how before Ning Qingxue couldn't wait for her to take her away. But now, she suddenly changed and even wanted to live here for an extra 2 days. What was this? What was so good about this place? Ning Qingxue shook her head and didn't answer. She was wondering when Yimo was going to come back. The original Yimo in her heart didn't seem to be the real Yimo at all. However, when did she ever try to get to know him? Whether it was before or after they got married, she didn't care about this person at all. Even the first time they met was a means to her own selfish ends. Li Mumei didn't question Ning Qingxue further as she knew that it was useless to ask something Ning Qingxue didn't want to say. When Su Wei came back at night, for the first time Ning Qingxue asked about Yimo. Although Su Wei didn't really like Ning Qingxue, she still told her about what happened ever since Yimo came here. Ning Qingxue didn't think Yimo's life was so simple. He just went out and came back each day. Perhaps Su Wei didn't even know he was a student. Yimo left Qinong Cliff at night. Although he wasn't scared of the Song family, his powers were still too weak. If the Song family managed to find out that he killed Song Shaoan and set traps for him, he wouldn't be able to find a stable place to grow his silver heartgrass, much less cultivate. Furthermore, it was only a matter of time before the Song family would find out that Song Shaoan's death was related to him. So, he was forced not to be found by the Song family at least within 3 years. Yimo used his cloud shadow steps to travel, and his speed wasn't lower than an ordinary car. At around 6 a.m., he had already arrived at the Feng Tang town. This was Feng Ko City's medium-sized town. Yimo found a little hotel and wanted to go in to wash when he realized that he didn't even have his identity papers with him. However, small hotels didn't necessarily require them, and Yimo knew that without his identity papers, it was obviously not suitable to live in the city. To avoid suspicion, Yimo carried a backpack with only daily necessities inside. There was some food as well as a few $1,000s which were all scavenged from Song Shaoan and his henchmen. Now, he just wanted to go to the mountain districts of Guilin, find a stable place to settle down and cultivate near the border of the country. Standing outside the gas station at Feng Tang Town, Yimo was troubled. If he left using a car, there was a great chance that he would be exposed since he had no identity papers with him, and there were many traffic police patrol that would stop long-distance buses to check identities. It would be better to go by train, yet there wasn't a single train station at Feng Tang Town. "Friend, are you going anywhere? Do you need a ride?" A 30-or-so-year-old man walked over and asked. Yimo had carried his backpack and stood out at the gas station for a long time. He was probably noticed by people, and they immediately came over to see if they could start a business. Yimo could tell with one glance that these people were doing illegal transport. It was probably to escape taxes or something similar. Usually, people wouldn't want to take these cars, but some people still chose to take these illegal cars to save money because it was cheaper. However, Yimo liked this type of transport because these cars would usually take off routes in the forest instead of highways. This way, they could avoid a lot of trouble. "Where does your car go?" Yimo asked casually. "Chi City, $55. How about it? Does that pass where you need to go?" The man asked full of hope. Yimo knew Chi City, although it was a bit far from where he wanted to go. It was in the right direction. No wonder there were illegal transport markets here. Yimo had already seen on the electronic screen that it was $95 to go to Chi City. Meanwhile, these people only asked for $55. It was almost half the price. Yimo nodded. "Okay. Lead the way. Black skin. I brought another one, $55 to Chi City." This man brought Yimo in front of a big bus and yelled, "It's this one, just go on." The man told Yimo to go on the vehicle and left to continue grabbing customers. So, he wasn't the driver but someone to help to grab customers. Yimo didn't mind. When he got on the bus, there were around 30 or so people. Yimo went to find a seat at the back and sat down. He closed his eyes and meditated for a while. A few more people got on until a woman attracted Yimo's attention. She wore a golden-framed glasses. Although she wasn't very pretty, she wasn't ugly either. However, she looked rather bulky. Her voluptuous body was also quite stunning. What made Yimo notice her wasn't her hot body but her killer's chi. Although she seemed like a normal person on the surface, she had this killer's chi that Yimo felt as soon as she got on the car. However, her glasses didn't match her temperament at all, and he wondered if she was pretending to be a civilian. This woman had killed people before and not just one. As soon as she got on the bus, she immediately attracted a lot of attention. A few youth even scanned their eyes across this woman's chest and buttocks as they swallowed their saliva. For this type of women, you didn't even need to look at her face. Just her body was enough to conquer any man. The woman scanned the car with her eyes as if not noticing these lewd glances. She scanned everyone including Yimo. Her eyes were sharp but not arrogant, which showed that this was a woman with a story. Yimo closed his eyes. He was also someone with a story. There were too many people in this world with a story, why bother about others? This was the season for long-distance travel, and the bus probably couldn't get any more people. Although there were less than 40 people on the bus still moved. After going for about half an hour, someone came to collect money. EMO gave the transport fee and continued to close his eyes to meditate. Although they weren't going on the highway, the car was still relatively stable. According to the driver, it would take around 4 hours to get to Chi City. Now they had gone for about 2 hours, it should be more than halfway. Driver, stop the bus. I'm getting off here. A sudden voice resounded. Lady, this is the Xianxia Mountain District. There's not even a hotel here if you get off here. The driver reminded her out of goodwill. However, his words were stopped halfway by this woman. That's my business. Please stop the bus. There's no other way here other than this road. If you enter the mountain here, you would be reaching the Guixiang mountain range. Although there are a few tourist spots, it is mostly primitive forests. If you get off here, there really is nowhere to go. A good-hearted middle-aged man said in the car. The woman stayed silent for a moment and went back to her seat again. It was unknown if it was because she felt that this middle-aged man was right or if it was something else. However, Yimo's heart was moved. Although it wasn't good for anyone else to get off here, it was good for him. He knew about the Guixiang mountain range. Its expanse went through the 3 provinces of Huzhong, Xianxia, and Guinan and was named after one of the 3 greatest mountain ranges of China. Guinan province was at the border between China and Vietnam, and the place where he wanted to go, Guilin, was the southernmost city of Guinan province. If he wanted to go there by car, he had to keep changing vehicles at Huzhong, Xianxia, and Guinan, but he didn't have his identity papers, which would increase his chances of being exposed. If he left from the Guixiang mountain range by himself, it was much safer despite it taking more time. Besides, there were a lot of trains passing by the Guixiang mountain ranges. Perhaps he could try to get on one, but even if he didn't, there was no pressure for him since he was able to cultivate while he walked. Driver, stop. I'm getting off, my friend's car is coming, said Yimo as he walked to the front. Not only was the driver stunned, but the people on the bus were too. Even the woman looked at Yimo curiously. The reason she didn't get off wasn't that this was the wilderness or in the middle of nowhere, but because she was scared that people would get suspicious of her and spread the word. After all, a woman getting off the bus in the wilderness was very unexpected. Just when she wanted to find a good reason to get off the vehicle, someone actually also said they wanted to leave, which suited her perfectly. The driver didn't say anything this time. Saying that there was another car coming obviously meant that he didn't want to take the bus anymore. The bus stopped and Yimo got off first, followed by that woman. However, what surprised everyone was that there were another 2 men that got off afterward. Everyone realized that those 2 got off because of Yimo and the woman. Nevertheless, the driver didn't dare to mind others' business and immediately started the bus, quickly disappearing at the corner. As for why that woman got off the car, Yimo understood that she already had the intention to leave when she had expressed herself earlier. However, he didn't understand why the 2 men behind also got off the car. It didn't take long for him to figure out their intention as the 2 men had circled the woman. One of them glared at Yimo and said, "Punk, if you want to live a few extra days, hurry up and piss off. There's no business for you here." Yimo had stumbled upon a case of robbery, which made him want to laugh. Although these 2 men looked tough, Yimo was sure they weren't a match for the woman. This woman stared coldly at the 2 men who approached her but didn't say a word. "Little girl, take out your money. Don't try to tell me you don't have any. I saw it when you picked up the phone. There should be more than 10,000. Hee, we were planning on robbing the bus, but since you have that much money on you, we might as well just rob you." The man who told Yimo to piss off turned to stare strangely at this woman. Yimo smiled. He didn't even want to bother himself with these sort of things since both parties weren't good people. "Wait!" Just when Yimo was about to leave, the woman suddenly called, "What?" Yimo turned his head and asked plainly. Seeing that Yimo wasn't worried at all, this woman scanned Yimo again with a look of surprise. However, she really couldn't notice anything abnormal about Yimo. This person was so normal and average. Even his shoes were as ordinary as it could be, which made her believe that Yimo really had a mental problem. "Help me out with something and later." This ferocious yet busted woman suddenly smiled and took off her glasses. Her face suddenly became lively with this smile. This was the first time Emo saw such a significant change in a face just because of a smile. It was as though she became two different people. I don't like fighting. Before the woman finished the latter half of the sentence, Emo had already refused. Ha ha! The woman was dazed for a moment and actually started laughing. She continued, I don't need you to fight. I want you to help me bury these two in the trees later. The two men who were surrounding the woman were originally looking at Emo fiercely. When they saw that Emo didn't leave immediately and wasn't scared, they instantaneously became vigilant toward him. Usually, people would run away if they saw someone getting robbed, so they had rarely seen someone who was fearless like him. However, when they heard that this woman was asking Emo to bury them, the taller man could no longer hold it as he grabbed his knife, piercing towards the woman's chest. Crack! Arg! Two sounds, yet the man with the knife was already on the ground. The other shorter man hadn't even reacted, but Emo saw it clearly. The woman quickly grabbed the tall man's wrist and pushed it upward when the man pierced the knife toward her chest. At the same time, she knocked the back of the knife with her hand, which flew right into the tall man's throat. Such a powerful woman. This whole set of moves was only a few breaths' time. If Emo wasn't at the second stage now, he wouldn't even be able to see it. Emo thought that if it was at the time when he was still at the first stage, and he had to fight this woman, then the odds would have been unpredictable. In other words, he wondered what would have happened if he had a conflict with this woman a month before and what the result would have been. Emo didn't like this sense of threat. The only way was to continually get stronger. The shorter man finally woke up to the situation. Although it was just a few breaths of time, he had already understood that they had met someone too powerful for them this time, and without a second thought, he turned and started to run. However, the woman suddenly kicked the knife that was still inside the tall man's throat. Then, with another kick on the back of the knife, send it toward the fleeing man whose heart got immediately pierced through from the back. You have guts, I didn't ask you to help me fight them, and, as you can see, you don't need to anymore. You just need to help me bury these two people in the forest, and all of their money is yours. The woman suddenly smiled at Emo once again. What if these two people don't have money on them? Emo asked plainly. The woman was stunned for a moment. She didn't think that Emo was still considering this problem right now. A normal person would have done what she asked ages ago. They wouldn't dare to argue. If there isn't money, then this is yours. The woman reached into her bag and pulled out a stack of notes, keeping only around half of it, and gave the rest to Emo. Emo casually took the notes. He saw that it was probably around $10,000 at the start, but the woman kept some, so there was only around $4,000 or $5,000 left, which was still really generous of her. Emo, who needed money at this moment, smiled and said, Fine, it's a deal. After saying that, he just dragged the two men laying on the ground into the forest. Watching Emo going so casually into the forest, as well as the ease with which he pulled the body, there was a sliver of approval in the woman's eyes as she muttered to herself. He has good strength and courage, it's just that he doesn't look manly enough. When Emo was dragging the two bodies into the forest, he searched them but didn't find anything good. Only around $1,000 cash on the bodies. As for their card, Emo didn't want it at all. However, that knife seemed passable and looked very sharp, so Emo took it as a trophy. With a few fireball techniques, he burned these two into a black ball of crisp but couldn't burn them completely into nothingness. Emo sighed, his fireball technique was too low caliber. If he were at the third stage, one fireball would have been enough to make them completely disappear. With a casual movement of his palm, he made a big pit and kicked the two bodies inside. Then, he used another palm to push some dirt in. He had never buried the people that he had killed. However, this time he received a few $1,000s to do it, so he might as well act like a hired laborer. After Emo had taken care of these two robbers, he didn't go back and instead went straight to the mountains. You wait up! The woman waited a while at the road, but since she still didn't see Emo come back, she immediately ran into the forest and found that Emo actually went farther in. She was barely able to see his back, and if she had been a little slower, Emo would have probably been nowhere to be seen already. Emo heard the woman's yell and stopped. Seeing him stop, the woman was really shocked. In her eyes, Emo left because he was scared of her. Therefore, when he heard her voice, He should have run as fast as possible. However, he actually stopped. She wanted to believe Yemo stopped because he was scared of her, but she knew that Yemo wasn't. He didn't seem scared in the slightest. "You're not afraid of me?" The woman walked up to Yemo and asked. Yemo pulled the bag on his shoulders and smiled plainly. "Are you going to kill me?" "No, you didn't offend me. I don't like killing people." The woman subconsciously shook her head. "Oh, since you won't kill me, why should I be scared?" Yemo asked as if things seemed weird for him. The woman looked at Yemo again. He was an ordinary youth that was decent-looking and looked clean and white. He wore tidy clothes and even looked like a student. He was probably only a little over 20 and didn't give her any signal of danger. She had escaped from death countless times, which left her with an unerring, natural instinct about people's strengths close to her own. And obviously, Yemo wasn't. "You are very bold. But if you're not scared of me, why are you running into the mountain? This mountain is your home? Can't I go inside?" This woman fumbled for words. Although Yemo's words were a bit aggressive, she didn't get angry. Instead, she smiled. "Okay, you're right. Let's get to know each other. I'm Wendong. One for hearing, Dong for winter." Yemo. Yemo simply said his name. He didn't know what this woman he didn't know wanted with him. "Do you know why I called to you and wanted to get to know you?" Wendong asked. However, she didn't wait for Yemo to answer and just said herself, "It's because I approve of you. You also saw just then, I'm not an ordinary person. If you want, I can introduce a master to you." Yemo waved his hand and said, "No need to introduce a master. If you don't have anything else, I'm going." "Don't be in such a hurry. Looks like you don't know how strong the most powerful people in this world can get. In that case, we'll talk about finding a master for you later. I have a business to do right now. Are you interested in going with me?" Of course, the remuneration is much more than burying 2 trashes. The woman didn't mind Yemo rejecting her goodwill and continued to talk slowly. Remuneration? Yemo thought that helping this woman to take care of 2 trashes earned him a few $1,000s, and since he needed money right now, if this woman could give him even more, then it wouldn't matter too much if he helped her out a bit more. Besides, he was already at the 2nd stage of chi gathering now, so he wasn't scared that this woman would try something to him. The most important thing for him was that, when he started to cultivate again, he wouldn't have the time to earn money. "Tell me, what is it about, and how much payment?" Yemo cared about how much he was paid the most. With enough money, he wouldn't have to worry about a lot of money-related things. Wendong didn't answer directly and instead said, "If you walk north from here, in approximately 10 kilometers, there's a road that goes straight to a tourist spot in the Xianxia Valley. In a small hotel at the tourist spot, I have 2 cases there. Then you just need to help me carry them and come with me to fulfill the business deal. Relax, with me here, you'll be very safe. At that time, you just need to give the cases and don't need to say anything. As for payment, I'll give you $50,000. How about it? 50K for just carrying a case?" This money was too easy to earn. Yemo wanted to go since he only earned a little more than 10,000 after arduously selling charms and treating diseases under those special opportunities. As for Wendong tricking him, he wasn't afraid of it at all, as he didn't believe that there was someone capable of killing him, and even if they were stronger than him, no one could stop him if he wanted to go. "Fine, I'll do it, but we can't go too far. I still need to go somewhere else." Yemo nodded and agreed without a second thought. Wendong nodded. Seeing Yemo's confidence, she said, "Not bad. You're a quick decision maker. Someone who can do big things. I like this. The place I am going for the deal is only a few hours by road. Perhaps, after the deal is done, there wouldn't be anything that would bother you for a minute." Seeing that Yemo didn't talk anymore, Wendong also didn't talk and started to lead the way. Although it was the mountain ranges here, Wendong was strangely light-stepped and didn't seem to struggle at all. She was afraid that Yemo couldn't keep up and intentionally traveled slowly. However, she discovered that Yemo's stamina was really good, and he didn't have any signs of having trouble to keep up with her, which surprised her. If it wasn't that Yemo didn't look like someone who practiced martial arts and for his elegant long white hands, Wendong would probably have suspected Yemo to be in the same field as her. Wendong's predictions were correct. After they had walked in the mountain for only around an hour or so, they saw another mountain road in front of them. This road was obviously more popular than the road where they got off. At least they could see a car coming every so often. Wendong and Yemo didn't wait long before stopping a bus heading towards Xiangshan Valley. Xiangshan Valley was China's famous tourist spot. Its fame was equal with the 5U Mountains. However, due to tourists going missing each year, and the high rate of accidents on the mountain roads, its popularity was far lesser than the 5 Great U Mountains and some other famous mountains. As soon as Yemo arrived at the Xiangshan Valley, he immediately felt that the spirit chi here was much greater than in Ninghai. If this place weren't too close to Ninghai, he even would have wanted to stay here and cultivate. The bus stopped at a parking place halfway up the mountain. Wendong told him to wait here while she got the stuff, and Yemo didn't wait long before Wendong drove a car over. "I have the thing. Get in the car. Let's go." Wendong stopped the car in front of Yemo and said casually. Although Yemo's spirit sense could only reach out to 5 or 6 meters, it was enough to check this car. He scanned with his spirit sense and didn't find anything wrong with it, except for 2 extra cases on the back seat. Yemo opened the door and sat in the back seat while his spirit sense scanned the box. One of them had an assault rifle. Yemo didn't have a good understanding of guns and didn't know what model gun this was, but it looked a bit like the AK series. The other box had a stack of information and a very strange model. Wendong was very happy with Yemo sitting at the back without question. However, she was also wondering if Yemo's attitude was because he was usually this bold or if he had simply not seen enough of the world. If it was that he hadn't experienced enough, then what would happen if he made some embarrassing moves? Thinking about this, Wendong said, "Yemo, later when we go in, if there are people staring at us on the side, you don't need to worry. You just need to listen to my instructions and give them the case." "I know." Yemo thought that they were probably exchanging the box with that model and a stack of information. Since Wendong was so calm, it meant that there was no danger. Besides, even if there were, Yemo wouldn't be scared, and after this deal, he could cultivate feeling relieved.